Chapter 1291. On the 18th floor of the Buddhist pagoda, the killing intent was like a cold current. "It's you. I didn't expect you to show up at this moment." The young man in the jade robe raised his eyes. When he saw Lin Sun's appearance, he was slightly stunned and then returned to normal. From the beginning to the end, the sword chi around him was like a whirlpool, roaring and rolling, which made him look like the master of the sword with an extremely restrained confidence. "This is retribution." Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. At this moment, he seemed to have changed into another person. His clothes were fluttering, and his killing intent was like a big avalanche, because the person in front of him was Yun Qinbai. He was regarded as the leader of the young generation of the heaven-reaching sword sect, and once had the title of the first person under the king realm. His name had spread far and wide since many years ago. There was no one who did not know of him. But for Lin Sun, Yun Qinbai had only one identity: enemy. This hatred was soaked with too much blood and tears. Over the years, Lin Sun had been searching all the way from the mine prison, Feiyun village, Xiao Empire, and ancient desolation. He had experienced endless dangers and hardships along the way in order to end this hatred. If he didn't avenge this hatred, how could he be a man? Now, in the 18th floor of the 3000 pagoda, Lin Sun unexpectedly met Yun Qinbai. The hatred accumulated in the deepest part of his heart completely broke out like lava. However, his consciousness remained extremely calm, and his mind was unprecedentedly clear. His entire body's essence, chi, and spirit were circulating under his control. Revenge didn't need any reason. However, Lin Sun would not be overwhelmed by hatred. He knew very well how powerful Yun Qinbai was. Whether in the past or now, this person could be called an overlord who could lead an era. His strength had long been known to all. On the Tianjiao Golden List of the Upper Nine Realms, no one had shaken his position so far. Therefore, if Lin Sun wanted to deal with such a person, he must be treated as a lifelong enemy. Retribution. Yun Qinbai said indifferently, "I only believe in the sword in my heart, but I have never believed in retribution. I, Yun Qinbai, have killed countless people since I started cultivating. If there was retribution, how could I have lived until now? It's not that I don't want retribution, but it's not the time yet." Lin Sun looked calm, and his palms and fingers had been accumulating strength. "Now, the retribution has come. Since we've already met, there's no hurry to die. Why don't we have a chat first? Speaking of which, this can be considered our first real meeting." Yun Qingbai's eyes were calm with extreme indifference. He was very calm. From start to finish, he just sat on the ground with a calm demeanor. He actually gave off a feeling of invulnerability. This caused the blackbird's pupils to constrict and flicker indeterminately. It had obviously heard of Yun Qinbai and knew how powerful he was. However, he didn't expect that he would bump into Yun Qinbai. He was originally here to kill Gu Fuzi's main body, but who knew that he would bump into Yun Qinbai? What about ancient Buddha's true self? Did you kill him? The big blackbird suddenly spoke. Yun Qinbai casually nodded and said, "This person cultivates the good and evil crossing worlds scripture. Over the years, he has killed countless fellow Taoists here. It can be said that his sins are monstrous. Of course, I'm not so chivalrous. The reason why I killed him was nothing more than to understand the Tao he was seeking." The big blackbird couldn't help but shudder when he casually described the matter of murder. It should be known that ancient Buddha of Kitagarbha Temple was so powerful, but he was killed by Yun Qinbai, who didn't take him seriously at all. "Then why don't you leave?" Lin Sun suddenly stepped forward slowly. At the same time, an unparalleled power spread from his body. His black hair fluttered, and his cold eyes were like lightning. His killing intent was firmly locked on Yun Qinbai. "Why should I leave?" Yun Qinbai didn't seem to care and didn't respond to Lin Sun's approach. His gaze swept the surroundings as he said, This 3,000 pagoda was left behind by the first holy Buddha of the ancient times, and an enormous fortune is sealed within it. According to my deduction, it's hidden within the 18 Tao diagrams inscribed on this wall. Before I comprehend its profundities, I'll naturally not leave. When Lin Sun and the big black bird came here, they did notice the 18 Taoist diagrams, but they didn't have time to investigate. At this moment, the big black bird couldn't help but look. As for Lin Sun, his mind didn't waver at all. He turned a deaf ear to it and took another step forward. His killing intent was concentrated on Yun Qingbai. At this moment, even if the world collapsed and everything was destroyed, he wouldn't be distracted. Clang! The broken blade swept out. It was as illusory as a feather, white and dazzling, emitting a peerless sharpness. Good treasure! Yun Qingbai's eyes lit up and he commented, "This blade must have a great origin. I can feel that its aura is far more than that." From the beginning to the end, Yun Qingbai's reaction was very calm, but because he was too calm, it gave people a feeling that they couldn't figure out what was going on. "Then what do you think if I cut off your head with this blade?" Lin Sun's voice was indifferent. The essence, qi, and spirit of his body had been activated to its peak state, and his entire body was in a state of everlasting and leakless. It could be foreseen that once he made a move, it would be a thunderous blow. You only have the cultivation of the third tribulation of longevity. No matter how powerful your combat power is, you are destined to be no match for me. Yun Qingbai said casually, "Not long ago, I obtained some indescribably wonderful opportunities by chance, and my cultivation reached the longevity 5 tribulation realm in one go. If I were to fight, I would be able to kill you within 3 strikes." His voice was still very calm. This was a kind of invincible faith, and the content of his words was enough to suffocate people. "Then why don't you make a move?" Lin Sun was unmoved, and his expression was calm from beginning to end. As he spoke, he took another step forward, and he was only 30 meters away from Yun Qingbai. Yun Qingbai said indifferently, "I'm just curious. According to my understanding, it's practically impossible for anyone who's deprived of their natural talent to survive, yet it just so happens that you've broken this impossible. Thus, I'm slightly unable to bear to kill you immediately." As far as I know, Yun Qingbai has always been decisive and never hesitant when facing his enemies. Why is he spouting so much nonsense this time? Lin Sun stopped. His thin and handsome figure was like a long spear piercing the sky. "Do you think I dare not?" Yun Qingbai sighed softly and suddenly got up from the ground. At this moment, it was like a magic sword sealed in the depths of the great void broke free from its shackles and came out at this moment. It was so fierce, confident, disdainful, dazzling, and boundless sharpness. If it were someone else, he would be frightened and his fighting spirit would collapse before he made a move. Because this breath was too horrible. However, Lin Sun sneered, "Pretentious." Swish. As soon as the voice sounded, the broken blade had already swept out. Impermanence chop. However, the might of this slash was extremely difficult to describe with words. It was unbelievably swift, and it was fierce to the extreme. Like a ray of light, it tore the chaos. The profound meaning contained in this chop also reached a shocking level. The anger of Yazi, fighting Saint Method, leakless eternity, devouring Star Way. This chop was Lin Sun's most powerful strike. Time seemed to be frozen at this moment. Yun Qingbai, who had stood up with a terrible momentum, suddenly narrowed his eyes at this moment. A rare solemnity appeared on his originally calm face. This chop even made him feel a kind of unparalleled amazement. It was truly difficult to imagine that the infant that was on the verge of death all those years ago would actually possess such attainments in the path towards the Tao. Unfortunately, clang. The earth-shattering collision sounded deafeningly, and the whole hall shook violently at this moment. On the nearby walls, 18 stone-carved Taoist diagrams shone at the same time and turned into an invisible mysterious power to resist the aftermath of this blow. As for the large black bird, it let out a piercing shriek as its body was plastered to the wall, and it let out a miserable shriek. Bang! At the same time, Yun Qingbai was shaken and staggered back more than 30 meters. His body trembled slightly imperceptibly. His eyes were as sharp as swords. He locked on Lin Sun like lightning and said, "It's a pity that you still can't do anything to me." However, at this moment Lin Sun smiled. "You just killed the doppelganger of Gu Fozi and devoured his talent. I'm afraid that you haven't had time to digest it completely, have you?" Yun Qingbai narrowed his eyes slightly and looked serious as if he knew Lin Sun again. He said, "You also control the Tao of devouring, so it's not a big deal to be seen through by you. Unfortunately, even so, you are still no match for me." Clang! The broken blade made a clear sound and attacked again. Lin Sun didn't intend to talk nonsense with him anymore. Chop! At the same time, a Taoist sword swept out, exuding the qi of the sky and appearing endless strange phenomena. It was chopped out by Yun Qingbai. The sword intent was also as strong as the sky, with unparalleled momentum. Clang! The collision between the two produced a thunderous roar, which reflected the terrible phenomenon of the end of the world and the destruction of all things. It could be imagined how terrible this kind of confrontation was. Deng deng deng, Yun Qingbai stepped back several steps in a row. He seemed to be in a bad shape, but he was unscathed. He said calmly, "What you said just now is right. If I weren't refining the talent of ancient Buddha, I wouldn't talk nonsense with you, who should have died at birth." Lin Sun strode forward with great momentum, like a demon. The broken blade struck out again at an incredible speed. Bang! 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 In the following battle, Yun Qingbai was continuously shaken back. Although he was unscathed, his aura began to fluctuate, and his face was slightly pale. However, his expression was still calm and indifferent, as if he wouldn't be affected at all. "Blackie, do it!" Lin Sun shouted suddenly. "Do you want to do it together?" A touch of contempt flashed in Yun Qingbai's eyes. Explode! The big black bird suddenly uttered obscure syllables, like the secret incantations of ancient demons. Puff! At the same time, Yun Qingbai's chest rose and fell violently as if he was struck by lightning. He couldn't help coughing up a mouthful of blood. And the broken blade also chopped down at the same time. Puff! Although Yun Qingbai dodged in time, he was still hit by the blade. A straight crack was torn on his back. His skin and flesh were torn open, and his bones could be seen. His blood was like a waterfall. What was chilling was that Yun Qingbai still looked calm and indifferent after suffering such a heavy blow, and his reaction was unexpectedly fast. Swish! With a flash of his figure, he rushed out violently. "You've ruined my plan. Next time, I'll destroy all of you." P.S. Xiao Bai is certainly not that weak. The next plot will revolve around this long-awaited battle. Chapter 1292. Before his voice died away, Yun Qingbai's figure had disappeared. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, Lin Sun stepped on the back of the big black bird and said, "Go after him." The big black bird rolled its eyes. Lin Sun regarded it as a mount, and the point was that it was not a mount, but it also knew that the opportunity was fleeting, so it didn't dare to neglect and disappeared in an instant like a black lightning. When it came to speed, even Lin Sun was ashamed of the big black bird's escaping method. As soon as he rushed out of the slaughter tower, Lin Sun saw Yun Qingbai's figure fleeing among the mountains of bones in the distance at an amazing speed. Faster! Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning. This was definitely a great opportunity to kill Yun Qingbai. Once he missed it, there would be no such good opportunity. Boom! In the void, after the figure of the big black bird disappeared for a long time, a long and narrow crack was torn in the void, producing a harsh explosion. The speed of light was far faster than the speed of sound. Although the speed of the big black bird couldn't be compared with teleportation, it was not much worse. Before long, it gradually approached Yun Qingbai. Whoosh! Lin Sun, who had been waiting for a long time, took action without hesitation. The broken sword swept out violently. Silence cut. Among the 6 cuts of Tianyuan, silence cut might not be as powerful as life and death cut and impermanence cut, but it was the fastest. With a puff, a string of blood splashed out from Yun Qingbai's body in the distance, leaving a deep wound on his shoulder. However, he didn't look back at all from beginning to end, so his speed was not affected at all. On the contrary, he became faster and faster, as if he was unaware of such a skin wound. It was chilling. It could also be seen how calm and tenacious his state of mind was. Even when he was escaping, he didn't panic at all. Moreover, numerous strands of sword light that seemed like swimming fish floated up into appearance around him, and they swished and flowed without end to form a defensive barrier around him. It was like a pair of bright and sharp sword wings. Bang! When the broken sword cut out again, the sword light rotated like a school of fish and turned into a dense vortex of sword chi. In the constant sound of friction and collision, the power of the broken sword was dissolved inch by inch. The most incredible thing was that with the help of this impact, Yun Qingbai's speed became faster and faster. But Lin Sun could keenly perceive that Yun Qingbai's body trembled under such an impact. Obviously, he was not feeling well. Bang bang bang. In the following time, Lin Sun continued to attack, but without exception, he was blocked by the dense vortex of sword chi. Even if it was broken, a new whirlpool of sword chi would appear, as if it was endless. Just like that, they had already crossed the Buddha land and left the Buddha earth in the sky. The sword chi was like a rainbow, leaving behind a sharp mark. Wherever it passed, the clouds would explode like bubbles. Behind him, the large black bird was like a bolt of black lightning, and it was in hot pursuit. What's that? What a terrifying aura! At the very least, it possesses the power of a longevity giant. Just who is fighting in the sky? All along the way, countless experts were alarmed and in an uproar. But when their gazes looked over, the figures of the fleeing and chasing parties had long since vanished from the sky. Terrifying rifts could be seen in space where the two of them passed, and their auras caused the expressions of most experts to change. Why do I feel that this aura belongs to Yun Qingbei? There were also some experienced people who noticed some clues from the aura left in the field. They couldn't help but gasp in surprise and doubt. Impossible! Yun Qingbei is now the strongest in the upper 9 realms. He has been ranked first on the Tianjiao Golden List since a few years ago, and this ranking has never been shaken. In today's world, who can kill him? Many people didn't believe it. Yun Qingbei, just this name, was like an undefeated legend, enough to make anyone feel desperate. It was rumored that not long ago, Yun Qingbei had set foot on the 5th tribulation of longevity realm, and he was like a god. Under such circumstances, who had the ability to kill him and make him have to escape? This seemed too ridiculous. But no matter what, this chase and escape still caused a huge uproar, and it shocked everyone to the point that their eyeballs almost popped out. Faster! Lin Sun urged. The large black bird had used all its strength, and it was so tired that it was about to foam at the mouth, but it could only endure it. It knew that Lin Sun would make Yun Qingbei stay this time, no matter what. Before long, Lin Sun took a deep breath and attacked again. Bang! In the distance, Yun Qingbei's figure staggered, and the sword chi vortex around him shook violently, as if it couldn't hold on any longer. This made Lin Sun feel refreshed. Yun Qingbei, you are the successor of the heaven-reaching sword sect. Don't you dare to fight with me head-on? Lin Sun shouted. At this time, Yun Qingbei's face was still calm, but it was faintly livid, and even the aura around him was tending to be violent. But in the end, he took a deep breath and held it back. Because in his current state, he couldn't exert his full combat strength. Thinking about it, He was really aggrieved. Since he started cultivating, he had never been defeated. In every battle, he crushed his opponents with absolute strength. When had he ever been chased like a ghost? And he was injured. He hadn't experienced this kind of humiliation for a long time. This time, the reason why he was in such a predicament also made Yun Bai feel that it was a bad year. He didn't expect that after killing the doppelganger of Gu Fozhi, he would encounter Lin Sun suddenly before he could completely devour and refine his talent power, so that he couldn't spare any energy to fight with all his strength. If it wasn't for this, with his pride and conceit, how could he possibly waste his breath on this ant that he'd never taken seriously in the Buddha's pagoda? If it weren't for this, how could he escape with injuries? What Yun Bai still didn't understand was why the big black bird only uttered a secret word at that time, which made him suffer a great internal injury and almost suffered a backlash. But no matter what, he hated. Extremely hated. Over the years, Yun Bai had long been indifferent to the world and devoted himself to pursuing Tao. Because among his peers, there was no opponent who could make him pay attention to. But today's encounter made him hate Lin Sun to the bone. What a joke! You just took advantage of me. Do you dare to fight with me fairly? Yun Bai said coldly. His voice was still indifferent, full of absolute confidence and disdain for Lin Sun. As soon as these words came out, the killing intent in Lin Sun's black eyes became more and more intense. He said, "Taking advantage of me? When you killed the direct descendants of my Lin family, did you ever think about fairness? When you dug up my spiritual vein, did you ever think about fairness?" Boom! Before his voice died away, Lin Sun attacked again. The broken blade shone brilliantly as it descended from an inconceivable angle. With a puff, Yun Bai's right arm was chopped off. If he hadn't dodged in time, his head would have been cut off. Suffering such a heavy blow, Yun Bai only let out a muffled groan and didn't say anything more. But his handsome face was already extremely livid. He was proud and conceited, and his Taoist heart was also extremely tough and strong. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to achieve what he had today. But it didn't mean that he wouldn't get angry. What happened today was regarded as a great shame to him. For the first time in his life, he was so angry that he was about to go berserk. He didn't say anything more. When he got out of trouble and made a comeback, he would pay back 10 times or even 100 times more. Unbeknownst to him, this chase had already lasted for 6 hours. Along the way, they crossed mountains and rivers and chased in the sky. No one knew how many tens of thousands of miles they had passed. Along the way, it also caused a lot of exclamations and shock. The big black bird was panting and about to collapse. It was on the verge of exhaustion. Lin Sun was not much better. Along the way, he didn't know how many times he had attacked, and each time he went all out. Up to now, he had consumed a lot of physical strength. But Yun Bai was more seriously injured. On his slender body, his clothes were ragged and soaked with bright red blood stains. Bloody wounds crisscrossed, and his skin and flesh were torn. Even one of his arms had been cut off. If it were others, they might not have been able to hold on after suffering such a serious injury. It could be seen how terrible and difficult it was to deal with Yun Bai. If such an opponent was allowed to get out of trouble this time, no one knew how long it would take to kill him in the future. "It seems that you can't hold on any longer," Yun Bai suddenly said in a calm voice. But at this time, Lin Sun took a deep breath, and a cold light flashed in his black eyes. The next moment, he pinched his fingers into a sword, and all the strength in his body gathered on his fingers like a roaring tide. An indescribably horrible aura also spread quietly. This side of the world seemed to be alarmed, wailing and trembling. Swish! Lin Sun's fingers stabbed in the void. A ray of sword chi appeared, and in an instant it filled the universe, cut through the longitude and latitude, contained endless mystery in it, and showed a sense of simplicity. Suddenly, Yun Bai's face in the distance changed abruptly, and he couldn't keep calm at all, because he smelled a fatal threat. That ray of sword chi was unparalleled, unrestrained, and unparalleled. It seemed that even if heaven and earth stood in front of it, it could also be broken by this sword. This sword was called One Go Without Return. Not good. As a peerless sword practitioner, Yun Qingbai's attainments in Sword Tao had already reached a shocking level. How could he not feel the horror of this sword? Without hesitation, he gritted his teeth and used his life-saving means. Buzz! A deep dark golden scabbard appeared, and a red rope was wrapped around it, which was branded with a teardrop. As soon as it appeared, a faint sigh sounded from within the scabbard. Boom! At the same time, Lin Sun's sword chi had arrived. The scabbard shone brightly and blocked the sword strangely. Yun Qinbai breathed a sigh of relief. But right after that, his expression changed once more. Bang! The sword sheath was actually blasted flying, and that wisp of sword chi was already flashing over menacingly. Tut! Suddenly, Yun Qingbai's aura rose a lot. He no longer cared about the suppressed injury in his body and completely broke out. An unparalleled sword intent swept out from his Taoist sword. Boom! In an instant, the two rays of sword chi collided, and the world seemed to be destroyed and fell into great turmoil. Chapter 1293. Rocks, grass, lakes, rivers all turned into nothingness in the roar. The void was collapsing, and the earth cracked into a huge ravine. The area within 1,000 miles was in a mess, as if there was an unprecedented earthquake. Wisps of broken sword chi were still floating in the void, full of killing intent, and didn't dissipate for a long time. In the smoke and dust, Lin Sun coughed and looked around. Then his heart sank. Is he dead? The big black bird popped its head out and asked. Not yet. Lin Sun recalled the scene before. Although Yun Qingbei blocked the attack in the collision of sword chi, he also suffered a heavy blow and his body was broken. Vaguely, he turned into a wisp of illusory light and disappeared without a trace. Just a little bit more. The big black bird was very disappointed. I didn't have much hope in the first place. Lin Sun was very calm, because he knew that people like Yun Qingbei couldn't be so easy to kill. This time, the reason why Zhang Xian was able to beat him to the brink of death was because Zhang Xian had caught him off guard. However, he suffered a serious injury this time. Even if he can recover, it will take a long time. Lin Sun breathed a sigh of relief. He felt exhausted all over. This battle seemed to be a narrow victory, but it made him clearly realize that if he fought with Yun Qingbei in his peak state, he was not even sure that he could kill him. The reason was that his cultivation was 2 levels lower than Yun Qingbei's. If they were in the same realm, Lin Sun was completely confident that he could kill Yun Qingbei completely. Do you want to continue to chase him? The big black bird asked. Lin Sun shook his head. There was no chance. Once a character like Yun Qingbei escaped, he was doomed to be unable to be found again with his wisdom and skills. Let's go back and have a look at the slaughter tower. Lin Sun made a decision. He needed to concentrate on digesting this battle, especially to make an accurate analysis of Yun Qingbei's combat power. Okay. The big black bird nodded in agreement. It also knew that Lin Sun had a big advantage in this battle. There were 2 key points. First, when they saw Yun Qingbei, he was at a critical juncture of refining ancient Buddha's innate talent power, so he couldn't unleash his full strength. Secondly, Yun Qingbei didn't expect that the black bird had already placed a mysterious restriction on Gu Fuzi's clone. Originally, he had done this to trap Gu Fuzi's main body and make him suffer when he merged with his clone's power. Little did he expect that ancient Arhat's real body had already been killed by Yun Qingbei. Instead, because he refined the talent power that he plundered from ancient Arhat's clone, he indirectly received the great gift that was originally prepared for ancient Arhat's real body. This was also the reason why Yun Qingbei was injured and coughed up blood in the Buddha's pagoda when the big black bird sent out a secret message. All in all, a series of coincidences stacked on each other and caused Yun Qingbai to fall into an extremely passive and distressed state. He had no choice but to flee. If it was a head-on confrontation, the big black bird also thought that Lin Sun had little hope of killing the opponent. But that might not be the case in the future. According to the big black bird's speculations, Yun Qingbai was seriously injured and on the verge of death. During the period of recovery, as long as Lin seized the time to make a breakthrough, his strength could change dramatically. Half a day later, Lin Sun and the big black bird returned to the Buddha's pagoda. Suppressing his tiredness, Lin Sun set up a Taoist pattern forbidden formation around the pagoda, and then directly began to cultivate in seclusion. The big black bird had been running all the way and was so tired that it had lost all its energy. It lay down in its big black pot and fell asleep. Yun Qingbai, the overlord of the Tianjiao Golden List, is being hunted by Demon Lin. In the outside world, such a news began to spread like a storm. Soon, it caused a sensation in the Zhen Mountain territory, and then spread to the entire Upper Nine territories. For a time, it also caused a great uproar. After 4 years of silence, as soon as Demon Lin appeared, he suppressed Ming Child and Ancient Arhat. How long has it been? Yun Qingbai has been forced to flee in embarrassment. Some people were shocked. Doesn't this prove that Lin Sun now has the combat power to point his sword at the first place of the Tianjiao Golden List? But he is only in the third tribulation of longevity, right? Some people were stunned. This must be fake. Yun Qingbai is invincible like the sun in the sky, shining alone in the universe. How can a firefly like Lin Sun compete with him? Some people didn't believe it and sneered. Where are the people of the heaven-reaching sword sect? Why didn't they explain this matter? Is Yun Qingbai really being hunted by Demon Lin all the way? A lot of discussion arose in the Upper Nine territories, setting off a lot of wave. Whether the news was true or not, it pushed Lin Sun's reputation a lot more for a time. It seemed that everyone in the world knew him. In the depths of a black ocean in the Kanshui territory, there was an isolated island. On this day, a roar that was filled with rage and hatred spread out like a surging thunderclap. For a time, the sea was tumbling, and the fierce beasts lurking in the sea were all frightened and fled in panic. After a long time, the sound disappeared. On the isolated island, Yun Qingbai sat paralyzed on the ground. His hair was disheveled, and he was panting. His face was terrible, and his eyes were bloodshot. If one looked carefully, his body was like a torn piece of porcelain that was covered densely in numerous bloody scars, and it was a horrifying sight. This time, the injury was far beyond Yun Qingbai's imagination. Being interrupted to refine the talent power of ancient Buddha made him suffer a backfire, and his own Taoist foundation had a trace of flaw. Meanwhile, the big black bird's curse had caused him to suffer serious internal injuries. It had already damaged his cultivation to the point where it had reached the level of his cultivation. What made Yun Qingbai hate the most was that in the confrontation with Lin's sword Qi, he had always been proud of his attainments in swordsmanship, but he failed to block that blow, so that his body was broken and his soul was seriously injured. How could the proud and arrogant Yun Qingbai swallow his resentment after witnessing all of this? Since he started his cultivation, he had won every battle and made great progress on the road of cultivation. When had he ever suffered such a setback? It was a great shame. After a long time, Yun Qingbai's mood calmed down, and his state of mind returned to its former calmness and firmness. His swordsmanship would not be defeated in this way. Being able to stand out among his peers and dominate the first place on the Tianjiao Golden List, Yun Qingbai was naturally not a genius in the ordinary sense. His talent, and foundation were all the best in the world. If he was depressed just because of a setback, he would not be Yun Qingbai. When I return, it will be the time for your souls to scatter. In the murmur, Yun Qingbai looked indifferent, and his eyebrows were full of killing intent. A few days later, Lin soon woke up from meditation, and his eyes were clear and quiet. Although he didn't kill Yunqi Bai after defeating him, this experience made Lin Sun's state of mind undergo a certain transformation. No matter what, he had won his first confrontation with Yunqi Bai. Although there was an element of luck, luck was also a kind of strength. In less than 3 days, I can break through the realm. Lin Sun had a premonition. In fact, as early as not long ago in the land of tragic death, his cultivation had reached the mastery, and he only needed an opportunity to break through the realm. Now, on a whim, he had a premonition of an opportunity to break through the realm, which was reasonable. Swish! 3 days later, Lin Sun's figure flashed and appeared over the 3,000 pagoda. With the release of his aura, black clouds covered the sky like a tide, emitting a terrible aura that was enough to make the world tremble. Lin Sun stood in the void, his black hair fluttering, and his expression was unprecedentedly calm. The 9 realms of longevity were divided into 3 disasters and 6 difficulties. He had already passed the first 3 disasters in one breath. Now, he was facing the 4th immortality tribulation, also known as the 7 emotions tribulation. All living creatures had 7 emotions and 6 desires. The 7 emotions referred to joy, anger, worry, yearning, sadness, fear, and shock, which reflected in the state of mind and would affect the cultivation of practitioners. The 4th immortality tribulation was the 7 emotions tribulation. Boom, the world was dim, and all things were chilling. In the depths of the clouds that covered the sky, there was a chilling dull thunder. Magnificent bolts of lightning flashed like giant snakes, emitting enough power to destroy the world and make the void chaotic. In Lin Sun's black eyes, there was no ripple, no sadness or joy. Crack! A dazzling bolt of lightning, like a spear that tore the sky apart, suddenly struck down, making an earth-shaking sound. At the same time, Lin Sun, who had been motionless, suddenly raised his head and rushed up. Someone is crossing the tribulation. On a mountain of white bones in the pagoda land, a tall figure narrowed his eyes and looked into the distance. There, the clouds were rolling, the thunder was furious, and the lightning was dancing wildly. The momentum was so great that it was like the end of the world. The 7 emotions tribulation. However, this tribulation is too terrible. I have never seen anything like it. It seems that a ruthless person who can go against the natural order is also breaking the realm. The tall figure had long red hair, a dignified manner, and sharp eyes, extremely domineering and disdainful. When he noticed this scene, his figure flashed and rushed to the place where the tribulation was in the distance. At the same time, in front of the skeleton of the sword sage, a woman bathed in ice and snow raised her head and looked into the distance. That should be the place where the 3,000 pagoda is. Someone actually chose to cross the tribulation there. Isn't he afraid of being targeted? The woman was dressed in a dark blue dress, and her figure was slender and graceful. Her long silver hair fluttered like a waterfall, revealing a peerlessly beautiful and fair face. After thinking for a moment, her figure fluttered like a fairy walking in the wind and snow, and she suddenly left. What a great momentum! Let's go and have a look. At this moment, the cultivators distributed in different areas of the pagoda land were alarmed one after another. Their eyes flickered, and they rushed to the place where the 3,000 pagoda was. Every cultivator who crossed the tribulation would usually choose a safe place to avoid being destroyed by others and thus suffering in the tribulation. But now, in the extremely dangerous pagoda land, there was actually someone bold enough to choose to cross the tribulation here. This itself was very conspicuous. Lin Sun was completely unaware of all this. His black hair fluttered, and the surging light of the Tao flowed around him. He was on a heaven-defying expedition. Blinding bolts of lightning fell, making his figure look like a god. He had a power that could shake people's hearts. P.S. That's all for tonight. I have urgent matters to attend to tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow's update will be at noon. Chapter 1294. The 3,000-foot pagoda was made of piles of bones, and it stood between heaven and earth. Above it, the tribulation clouds were thick, thunder and lightning were rumbling, and the heavenly might it released was so heavy that it filled the surrounding area with a terrifying atmosphere. Lin Sun's figure was bathed in lightning arcs, and his whole body was shining like a god. "It's Demon Lin!" someone exclaimed. Nearby, many practitioners approached one after another. When they saw clearly that the person who was crossing the tribulation was the fierce and powerful man in the legend, they couldn't help but be surprised. "It's him. He's only crossing the 4th longevity tribulation now. How could he possibly be a match for Yun Qi Bai with such combat strength?" The man with fiery red hair also came. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his figure was tall, exuding a strong and overbearing momentum. He looked at Lin Sun, who was crossing the tribulation, with puzzlement. Suddenly, he seemed to feel something, and his eyes swept to the other side. A beautiful figure bathed in illusory ice and snow emerged. Her appearance was outstanding, and her bearing was like the bright moon in the sky, pure and aloof. At the same time, the woman also looked over with her clear eyes. Suddenly, their eyes collided in the void, and both of them recognized each other. Qi Lingxiao, Saintess Lin Shui. Then, both of them withdrew their gazes and ignored each other. At the same time, there was a commotion in the field. Many practitioners recognized the identities of Qi Lingxiao and Saintess Lin Shui, and they were moved. In the upper 9 realms, those who could be ranked on the Tianjiao Golden List could already be regarded as giants among their peers. Those who could be ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List could already be regarded as overlords, and all of them possessed peerless aptitude and great luck. Qi Lingxiao and Saintess Lin Shui were ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List. Over the years, the rankings on the Tianjiao Golden List had changed almost every once in a while, but neither Qi Lingxiao nor Saintess Lin Shui had fallen out of the top 10. This was enough to prove how terrifying their combat strength was, and it was no wonder that all the practitioners present were restless at this moment. Lin Shui, these days, there are rumors everywhere that Lin Sun killed Yun Qi Bai and forced him to flee. Do you believe it? Suddenly, Qi Lingxiao spoke with a heavy voice that carried a domineering aura that struck directly at the heart. He was like an overlord that had descended to the world. His imposing manner soared, and he didn't conceal it at all. "Why don't you go and ask?" Saintess Lin Shui's voice was low, clear, and bone-chilling. Qi Lingxiao laughed heartily. His eyes were overflowing with divine light as he gazed at Lin Sun, who was crossing the heavenly tribulation in the distance. He said, "It's useless to ask him. After all, there's only one way to know the real answer." Everyone present pricked up their ears. "You want to make a move?" Saintess Lin Shui was surprised. Qi Lingxiao's laughter grew even more carefree and unbridled, and he said, "Saintess Lin Shui knows me best. Not bad, it's a rare opportunity, so I naturally wouldn't miss it." Many people felt a chill in their hearts. Everyone knew that ever since Qi Lingxiao had appeared in the ancient Desolation Realm, he had killed one top figure after another among his peers. By the time they entered the Pinnacle region, there were at least hundreds of Heaven's favorites who had died in the hands of Qi Lingxiao. As for the other people who had died in his hands, there were countless of them. It wasn't exaggerated to say that Qi Lingxiao was a maleficent existence that thirsted madly for battle. He did as he pleased, was lawless, and was extremely overbearing and domineering. Now, he wanted to kill Lin Sun. How could people not be surprised? "I'm afraid that you'll be rejected." Saintess Lin Shui's tone was cold. She was as cold as ice and snow, and her charm was extraordinary. "Ha ha!" Qi Lingxiao looked up to the sky and laughed. "I'm afraid that Lin Sun can't stop my killing." His voice was powerful and sonorous. All people like him had cultivated the belief of invincibility. How could they be afraid of a fight? If Lin Sun was really powerful, it would be fine. But if he didn't live up to his name, Qi Lingxiao wouldn't mind killing him. The reason? Did he need a reason to kill? This was Qi Lingxiao, overbearing, domineering, but also extremely powerful. Otherwise, according to his nature and temper, he would have been killed long ago. I want to advise you not to do stupid things. You should know the consequences after seeing the end of Mingzi and Gu Fouzi. Lin Shui said calmly. Qi Lingxiao's eyes suddenly flashed with sharpness. He said, although I know you're goading me, I'll take it. Boom. Speaking of this, he suddenly rose into the air and let out a long roar. Lin Sun, hurry up and cross the tribulation. I'm waiting to fight with you. His words filled the sky and made everyone's expression change. It should be known that Demon Lin was crossing the tribulation. A slight mistake could lead to disaster. But Qi Lingxiao challenged him at this moment. This was undoubtedly an act of sabotage. Wasn't the seven emotions tribulation a test of one's state of mind and emotions? If Demon Lin was affected, how could he end up well? In the distance, the thunder tribulation became more and more terrifying. Lin Sun struggled in it, looking extremely embarrassed. It seemed that he couldn't hold on any longer. It was unknown whether he was affected by Qi Lingxiao. Don't you think you've gone too far? Lin Shui glanced at Qi Lingxiao. This is tribulation. Since he chose to cross the tribulation here, he should be prepared to bear the interference of the outside world. He can't blame anyone. Qi Lingxiao smiled brightly. What's more, if he can't even bear such an influence, he deserves to be struck to death by the thunder tribulation. Everyone sighed in their hearts. Qi Lingxiao was really too arrogant. He acted completely according to his character, and seemed extremely unscrupulous. Lin Shui didn't say anything more. Although she couldn't stand Qi Lingxiao's behavior, she wouldn't stand up for Lin Sun. After all, it was the first time she met Lin Sun. They were like strangers. She couldn't offend Qi Lingxiao just to help Lin Sun. Lin Sun, do you hear me? Just reply if you hear me. Of course, even if you don't agree, I'll do it later. Qi Lingxiao spoke again in a clear voice. Everyone couldn't help but gasp. If they were in Lin Sun's shoes, they would never act like Qi Lingxiao. Under the thunder tribulation, Lin Sun was covered in blood and his skin was damaged. He looked very embarrassed and miserable. His tribulations were different from those of other strong practitioners. Each one was more abnormal and terrifying than the previous one. He also knew that it had something to do with the path he was pursuing. After all, similar things had happened when he crossed the tribulation in the past, so he was already prepared. However, even then, he still felt that it was extremely difficult and dangerous, and it was to the extent that he was enduring unprecedented pressure while persisting until now. At this time, Qi Lingxiao's unscrupulous provocation was like the cawing of a crow, which made Lin Sun a little annoyed. Don't worry. I promise I'll pull out your tongue and smash your mouth. His voice was cold. Just because of this sentence, Lin Sun was slightly distracted, which caused him to be struck by the terrible thunder again, and his body almost fell from the air. Qi Lingxiao couldn't help laughing. Well, don't be struck to death. If you do, you'll completely become the laughing stock of the world. Everyone sighed. Qi Lingxiao's action was equivalent to completely offending Lin Sun. However, everyone knew that even if Lin Sun stepped into the fourth retribution of longevity, it would be very difficult for him to defeat Qi Lingxiao, who had already stepped into this realm. It should be known that Qi Lingxiao's ranking on the Tianjiao Golden List was even higher than that of Mingzi. Why is it not over yet? Are you too weak, or is the thunder tribulation too strong? Before long, Qi Lingxiao seemed to be a little impatient and urged, hurry up. My time is very precious. I don't want to waste it on you. When the thunder tribulation came, no one dared to get close to it, lest they would be touched by it. The consequences would be serious. They would be seriously injured at least, or even killed directly. This was also the reason why Lin soon dared to cross the tribulation here. Since ancient times, who dared to sneak attack those who were crossing the tribulation? It was absolutely no different from courting death. Of course, it was possible to interfere with sound or destroy it with some secret weapons in the air. However, practitioners had already made full preparations in advance when crossing the tribulation. Usually, being disturbed by sound would rarely affect the person crossing the tribulation. Similarly, secret weapons that could destroy the person crossing the tribulation were extremely rare. However, the tribulation Lin Sun was crossing was the seven emotions tribulation, which directly affected the state of mind and emotions. Qi Lingxiao chose to interfere with sound, which could produce a miraculous effect. This was also the reason why people thought that Qi Lingxiao seemed to be upright, but in fact, his means were extremely sinister. Can you do it or not? Qi Lingxiao started to shout again. Some practitioners didn't think it was a small matter. It was too obvious that he was targeting Lin Sun. Boom! At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly stretched his body in the sky and rushed out of the rolling thunder tribulation. He punched out, and the tribulation clouds in all directions collapsed. In an instant, the tribulation subsided, and only the dazzling lightning scattered all over the sky, bathing Lin Sun in it. His clothes were torn, his body was stained with blood, and his hair was disheveled. He was extremely miserable and embarrassed. However, his expression was extremely calm. Cold killing intent flickered within his abyss-like black pupils. Whoosh! He took a deep breath and felt the tremendous changes that were taking place in his body. He was relieved. He passed it. Everyone was shocked. This tribulation could definitely be said to be unprecedented, and it truly broadened one's horizons. After this tribulation, Lin Sun had successfully broken through from the third tribulation of longevity to the fourth tribulation of longevity. His combat capability was destined to have a qualitative improvement. However, at this moment, people had no time to sigh with emotion. They all followed Lin Sun's eyes and looked at Qi Lingxiao in the distance. Everyone knew that a fierce battle was inevitable. Thinking of Qi Lingxiao's naked provocation just now, those practitioners present couldn't bear it at all. You can't wait, can you? Come on. Lin Sun said in a cold voice, full of killing intent. He didn't know who Qi Lingxiao was, but even if he knew, he wouldn't care at all. Don't you want to take a rest? I don't want to take advantage of you. If the news gets out, even if I win, it will be a disgrace to me. Qi Lingxiao said slowly. Everyone was speechless for a while. Weren't you taking advantage of others when you provoked and interfered before? P.S. 2 consecutive updates. Chapter 1295. This was teasing. Everyone realized that Qi Lingxiao had been deliberately teasing Lin Sun from the very beginning. His intention was not malicious, but it was definitely very bad. Why do I need to rest when dealing with trash like you? Lin Sun's eyes were cold. Trash. These two words silenced all the people present. In the upper 9 regions, who dared to use such words to describe the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List? This was a blatant humiliation to Qi Lingxiao. Sure enough, Qi Lingxiao's face turned cold in an instant, and his eyes were filled with terrible divine light. He said, "How dare you humiliate me? Those who humiliate others will always be humiliated by others. Don't you agree with me calling you trash?" Lin Sun's words were plain, but they made everyone shudder. Only now did they realize that perhaps Qi Lingxiao could be considered to be a ruthless person who did things his own way and was completely out of control. But Demon Lin was not a pushover either. When it came to courage, everyone in the upper 9 realms had witnessed it. Taoist Qi, I just reminded you not to go too far. Look, your retribution is coming. Lin Shui suddenly said. Qi Lingxiao's face became more and more gloomy after hearing this. I'd like to see what you are capable of talking like this. Boom! The next moment, Qi Lingxiao rose into the air with his fiery hair dancing wildly. Behind him, There was a scene of the collapse of the 6 purgatories and the fall of ghosts and gods. This was the power of the 6 purgatory devastation technique, a peerless method from ancient times to the present. In an instant, the whole world roared, and Qi Lingxiao's power was terrifying. He was so domineering that he could devour the universe. Whoosh! At this moment, Lin Sun rushed out with his dipper style. Suddenly, he pressed his fingers together, and the broken sword burst out. Impermanence chop. If one had seen the scene of the fight between Lin Sun and Yun Qinbai, he would clearly find that the power of this impermanence chop had obviously skyrocketed, and it had undergone a qualitative transformation. Qi Lingxiao was shocked. He was just about to resist, but there was a bone-piercing chill all over his body, as if his throat was being held by a blade. His face changed greatly. Realizing the horror of this chop, he did not hesitate to use all his strength. 6 Hell's chant of death. Amidst his explosive shout, his fist smashed out. 6 purgatories appeared, forming the power of 6 directions, suppressing the world as they smashed out. Every purgatory had different scenes and different auras, and when they were gathered together, it was as if the door to the 6 paths of reincarnation had been opened. Without a doubt, this was Qi Lingxiao's ultimate move. At this moment, everyone felt as if they were in an icy pit, and they felt a chill run down their spines. Such a technique simply had the power to shock ghosts and gods. However, to everyone's astonishment, the force of Lin Sun's slash seemed as if it were crushing dry weeds. Everywhere it passed, the 6 purgatories were forcefully split apart, and deafening explosions resounded. Amidst the rain of light, a bloody wound was torn open on Qi Lingxiao's arm. He seemed to be in disbelief as he touched his wound and said, "You can actually injure me?" The surroundings were deathly silent. Not only was he injured, this was only the first strike of the battle, and he had already gained the upper hand. In the distance, Saintess Lin Xue's clear eyes suddenly narrowed, and her heart trembled. Lin Sun had just passed the heavens test, and his aura was weak. But under such circumstances, Lin Sun's slash had injured Qi Lingxiao. Then, how powerful was Lin Sun's combat strength? Trash is trash. Who gave you the courage to provoke me? With a voice as cold as a knife, Lin Sun rushed out violently. He was obviously injured all over, and his hair was disheveled, which made him look very embarrassed. But when he attacked, he gave people an oppressive aura that almost suffocated them. "You're courting death!" Qi Lingxiao roared, and his hair flew in the air. Endless flaming Taoist light spread from his body, making him look like a burning sun. 6 refined blades. In the void, 6 purgatories emerged, and the flaming blades swept out like a tide, turning into a large saber formation. It was so powerful that it was earth-shattering. Many practitioners retreated in horror, and their scalps were numb. Lin Sun controlled the broken blade and fought with Qi Lingxiao indifferently. Boom! When the two collided, the world seemed to explode. The void was in disorder, and there was a chaotic and turbulent atmosphere. Wherever the blazing turbulence swept through, mountains of bones collapsed and turned into powder that flew in the air. This was destined to be an unparalleled battle at the overlord level. But to everyone's horror, in just a moment, Qi Lingxiao was injured again. He was cut by the broken blade and flew backward, with blood spurting from his mouth and nose. The reason why his body was intact was that the armor on his body helped him neutralize the power of the slash. But even so, he still suffered internal injuries. "Why don't you talk, trash? Didn't you shout just now?" Lin Sun's voice became colder and colder. During the heavens test, the most taboo thing was to be disturbed by the outside world. Lin Sun had no grievances with Qi Lingxiao, but this guy was so arrogant and frequently disturbed him. This was not as simple as offending and provocation. Therefore, when Lin Sun attacked, he was not polite at all. Qi Lingxiao was angered to the point he almost coughed up blood from being repeatedly humiliated by Chen Shi as trash. Since he'd emerged into the world, he'd stepped on the corpses of numerous geniuses all along the way to rise up, and he seemed to have become an existence that caused the expressions of others to change upon mentioning him. He'd never been humiliated like this. Kill! Qi Lingxiao roared and completely broke out. Bang! But soon, he was defeated again. His mouth was broken by Lin Sun, and many teeth fell off. Half of his face was red and swollen. At this moment, everyone remembered what Lin Sun said just now. He wanted to pull out Qi Lingxiao's tongue and smash his mouth. Saintess Lin Shui could no longer keep calm. She could see that Qi Lingxiao was obviously inferior to Lin Sun in terms of combat power. He was no match for Lin Sun at all. And as time went by, Lin Sun's aura was recovering and improving at an amazing speed, becoming more and more terrifying. Obviously, he was recovering quickly from the weak period after the Heavens test, and his realm was no longer comparable to that of the third retribution of longevity. This time, Qi Lingxiao is really going to have to bear the consequences. Saintess Lin Shui sighed in her heart. Sure enough, as soon as she thought of this, in the field, Qi Lingxiao let out a scream of anger. His mouth was bloody and swollen. Obviously, he had been hit by Lin Sun again. His jaw bones were broken and collapsed, and he was beyond recognition. Perhaps this was called a loose tongue that caused trouble. Before, Qi Lingxiao was so arrogant and domineering. When Lin Sun was going through the Heavens test, he spoke without restraint, as if he was the ruler of the world. But now, his miserable appearance made everyone around feel distressed, and they couldn't bear to see it. Qi Lingxiao was an overlord ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List, but now he was beaten up by demon god Lin. It was really miserable. It could be foreseen that when the news of this battle spread out, Qi Lingxiao was destined to become a well-known tragic figure. And the strength of Lin Sun's combat power was also shocking. They couldn't help but think that it was really Lin Sun who chased after Yun Qin by a few days ago. Clang! The broken blade swept out and was about to cut Qi Lingxiao in half. Just at this moment, a shout suddenly sounded. "Elder brother, wait!" Buzz! Suddenly, the broken blade stopped 3 inches away from Qi Lingxiao's eyebrows. The incomparably sharp light pierced the skin between his eyebrows, and a dark red blood stain came out. It could be imagined that Qi Lingxiao would definitely be cut in half if this cut fell. Qi Lingxiao was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. His clothes were soaked in cold sweat, and he felt like he had just passed by the gate of hell. Old Toad? At this time, Lin Sun looked up at the place where the voice came from. He didn't know when, but there stood a green-robed teenager with a handsome and evil face. He was grinning at Lin Sun with a wretched look. Who else could it be but Old Toad? Everyone's eyes also followed him, wanting to see who on earth the man who could stop Lin Sun from killing Qi Lingxiao was. "Elder brother, let him go this time. This guy has been my best friend since ancient times. He also helped me a lot in the search for ancient Buddha in the upper 9 regions." Old Toad rushed forward and whispered. Lin Sun was quite surprised and delighted to meet Qi Lingxiao here after more than 4 years. Seeing that it was Old Toad who begged for mercy, Lin Sun didn't want to argue with Qi Lingxiao anymore. He withdrew the broken blade with a clang. "Don't do it again." He glanced at Qi Lingxiao, whose face was gloomy, but he was relieved in his heart. When he looked at Lin Sun again, Qi Lingxiao's eyes had become extremely complicated. He had never thought that he would be defeated so badly that there was no chance for him to win or counterattack. Only when he fought with Lin Sun did he realize how powerful and terrible the latter was. "Ha ha ha, you deserve this day. How many times have I said it? How can a person that I, Jin Dui, recognize as Big Brother be ordinary?" Looking at Qi Lingxiao, whose mouth was red and swollen and bleeding, Old Toad laughed wildly with tears almost flowing out of his eyes. In ancient times, the reason why he could make friends with Qi Lingxiao was that their identities were roughly the same, but the fundamental reason was that they were birds of a feather. Qi Lingxiao was arrogant, domineering, and lawless, which suited Old Toad very well. He was also an extremely proud, complacent, and condescending person. The friendship between them was a feeling that they appreciated each other and regretted not meeting each other earlier. After a long period of silence, the two of them had only met again a few years ago. That was why Old Toad stopped Lin Sun from killing Qi Lingxiao. Humph! I can't beat your elder brother, but I can beat you effortlessly. Do you want to have a try? Qi Lingxiao's face was burning. Being laughed at by Old Toad like this made him feel uncomfortable. Come on, let's talk in the slaughter tower. Lin Sun glanced around, then turned around and walked towards the slaughter tower. Old Toad was about to follow Lin Sun. Seeing Qi Lingxiao standing there in a struggling posture, Old Toad immediately rushed forward, put his arms around Qi Lingxiao's shoulders, and walked towards the slaughter tower. My elder brother is your elder brother. It's not a shame to be beaten up by him. Come on, I'll introduce you later. Old Toad was very enthusiastic. Qi Lingxiao was silent, but he didn't refuse. Taoism Pier Lin, can I go with you? Suddenly, Saintess Lin Shui opened her mouth. Her voice was as clear and pleasant as the sounds of nature. She stood there with skin of ice and bones of jade, outstanding beauty, and peerless grace. Chapter 1296. This request was a bit presumptuous. After all, before this, they were like strangers with no relationship to speak of. However, this caused all the cultivators in the surroundings to feel envy and jealousy in their hearts. In the upper 9 realms, Saintess Lin Shui was like a goddess, not only because she had a peerless appearance that made people feel ashamed of their inferiority. More importantly, her foundation and strength also ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List, making countless heroes bow down to her. But because her temperament was as cold as snow and she had always been alone, it was very difficult for people to get along with her. But now, she took the initiative to talk to Lin Sun and the others. This was an extremely rare thing. How could people not be envious? Lin Sun was also obviously stunned. He turned his head and asked, "Can you give me a reason?" His words almost made many people roll their eyes. Anyway, Demon Lin was also a famous figure in the world. How could he be so insensitive? Did such a talented and beautiful woman need a reason to make a request? But there were also many people who secretly admired him. What did it mean to be like a rock in front of a beauty? Lin Shui's action could be said to be a vivid illustration of this point. Saintess Lin Shui was also stunned, and then said in a clear voice, "I have long heard of your name and admire you. Is this a good reason?" Lin Sun said with a smile, "Then please." He was able to sense that Lin Shui didn't have any hostility towards him. Moreover, since she'd already spoken like this, it would be unreasonable of him to refuse her. When other practitioners saw this, they couldn't help but say, "Taoism Pier Lin Sun, we also admire you very much. Why don't even think about it." Old Toad interrupted them without hesitation and refused mercilessly. Everyone was speechless for a while. This was called fucking differential treatment. But they couldn't do anything about it. Who dared to eat bear's heart and leopard's heart to break in? On the 18th floor of the Buddha Tower. I didn't expect that you have been running around for my affairs all these years. You've worked hard. Come on, let me propose a toast to you. When he learned that Old Toad had been looking for Gu Fozhi and wanted to avenge him during the 4 years he was trapped at the bottom of Styx River, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel touched. He raised his glass and proposed a toast to Old Toad. "We are brothers. Don't be so polite." Old Toad raised his cup and drank heartily. When he saw Lin Sun, how could he not be ecstatic? No discord, no concord. "If I offended you just now, please forgive me." Lin Sun raised his glass and looked at Qi Lingxiao. Before this, Qi Lingxiao had been sitting on pins and needles, feeling uncomfortable all over. The pride in his heart made him unable to face Lin Sun. At the same time, today's defeat really made him feel ashamed to raise his head in front of Lin Sun. But at this time, When Lin Sun took the initiative to apologize and toast to him, Qi Lingxiao was stunned. After a long while, he seemed as if he'd awoken from a dream, and he took a deep breath before raising his cup and saying, "Big brother Lin, you're a straightforward person, and you're magnanimous and magnanimous. I should be the one toasting you this cup. Please." Lin Sun smiled. The two of them drank to their heart's content. "Ah, big brother, you don't know, but this kid, Qi Lingxiao, was a renowned devil incarnate all those years ago. I've known him for so long, yet I've never seen him act so bashfully." On the side, old Toad laughed. "You Toad, will you die if you don't say a few words?" Qi Lingxiao said angrily. "I won't die, but I'll feel very uncomfortable," old Toad said seriously, and then couldn't help laughing. Today, he was really happy. Not only did he reunite with Lin Sun, but he also helped his good friend resolve a danger at a critical time. Now he could sit here and talk and laugh. This feeling, wasn't it great? You are all first-class talents in the world. It's my honor to be acquainted with you. I would like to toast you with the wine in my cup. Saintess Lin Shui opened her mouth. Her voice was as clear as spring water, more beautiful than the sound of nature. Her black hair was like a waterfall, her black eyebrows were like ink, her red lips were soft and moist, and there was a hint of a smile in her clear eyes. Suddenly, it was like the spring breeze and rain, diluting her cold aura a lot. A pair of slender hands held the wine cup. Her every move could be described as an outstanding beauty that could topple the world. She was indeed a peerless woman who was regarded as a goddess by countless heroes in the upper 9 realms. Everyone raised their cups and drank with her. Suddenly, the atmosphere was much warmer and more harmonious than before. Over the years, I have traveled all over the upper 9 realms and almost died several times. Fortunately, I finally met my elder brother today. After 3 rounds of wine, old Toad was a little tipsy and couldn't help sighing with emotion. Only then did Lin realize that the old Toad had entered the perilous Buddha land and was trapped in one of the perilous places after he appeared in Kongsha Mountain. It was not until recently that he got out of trouble, so he didn't know that Lin Sun was still alive. It's a pity that there's still no news of the barbarian Alu. I'm really worried about this rude guy. Speaking of this, old Toad couldn't go on. Lin Sun's heart also felt heavy. All those years ago in the burning immortal world, Alu had bid farewell to Lin Sun and left to search for the ancient land of Wanxiang by himself. But now, a few years had passed, and Alu's whereabouts were still unknown. How could Lin Sun not be worried? Brother Lin, with your current fame, you have long been known by the strong practitioners in the upper 9 realms. If Brother Alu knows you are here, he will definitely come as soon as possible. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little dull, Qi Lingxiao said aloud. Alas, this guy has been looking for the ancient land of Wanxiang all these years, but I have never heard of such a place in the upper 9 realms. Old Toad murmured. Ancient land of Wanxiang? At this moment, Saintess Lin Shui suddenly said, I have heard of this place. All of a sudden, Lin Sun and Old Toad looked at Lin Shui. In the thunder-shocking territory, there is a place of fortune that is comparable to the lair of true dragon. It is called the ancient land of Wanxiang. Not long ago, I left the thunder-shock territory and obtained some reliable information. According to my speculations, the seal of the ancient land of myriad phenomenon has yet to disappear completely. I'll have to wait at least 2 years before I can enter it. Saintess Lin Shui didn't hide anything and told them some information she knew. Old Toad frowned and said, So, Alu has no chance to enter it? Saintess Lin Shui said, Not necessarily. The seal has been loosened, but it hasn't completely disappeared. If he knows some secrets about the ancient land of Wanxiang, he may be able to enter it. At the end of the conversation, Lin Sun and Old Toad decided to wait for a while. If there was still no news of Alu, they would decide whether to go to the thunder-shocking territory. There is one more thing I want to confirm with Brother Lin. Please enlighten me. Saintess Lin Shui stared at Lin Sun with a trace of curiosity in her clear eyes. A few days ago, there was a rumor everywhere. Yun Qi Bai, the overlord of Tianjiao Golden List, was chased by Brother Lin all the way. Is it true? In a word, it proved that even a peerless figure like Saintess Lin Shui was paying attention to this matter, and it was difficult to make a judgment. Qi Lingxiao, who was drinking with Old Toad, stopped and pricked up his ears. It is true, but it is not as exaggerated as the rumor. At that time, Lin Sun didn't hide anything. He told them what happened at that time in a simple and concise way, leaving out many details. But even so, it still made Saintess Lin Shui and Qi Lingxiao a little absent-minded. This news turned out to be true. Alas, if I had known this, how could I have dared to provoke Brother Lin? Qi Lingxiao smiled bitterly and sighed. Everyone knew how terrible Yun Qingbai was, but Lin Sun could chase Yun Qingbai all the way. This was simply too fierce. Old Toad gave a thumbs up. Big brother, you're awesome. Lin Sun sighed helplessly. Anyway, Yun Qingbai is indeed very strong. Even though I had a lot of advantages at that time, he still escaped. At that time, Yun Qingbai was in the fifth tribulation of longevity realm. It was amazing that Brother Lin could suppress him and make him flee. Saintess Lin Shui's eyes were shining with extraordinary splendor. What's more, the luck of the Great Way is also a kind of strength. Lin Sun sneered. Speaking of luck, Yun Qingbai's luck is not bad. At least, he still escaped without using all his means. Next, the topic turned to Gu Fozhi. When they learned that Gu Fozhi was killed by Yun Qingbai and even his talent was taken away, everyone was shocked and couldn't calm down. Gu Fozhi, an ancient freak from the Xitigarbha temple, was extremely mysterious and terrible, but he was killed by Yun Qingbai. It could be imagined that if this matter was spread out, it would cause a big storm in the upper 9 regions. Even if this matter spread to the ancient Desolation territory, there would be a certain degree of friction and impact between the two ancient orthodoxies, the heaven-reaching sword sect and the Xitigarbha temple. Brother Lin, is there a feud between you and Yun Qingbai? At the end of the topic, Qi Lingxiao couldn't help asking. Blood feud. Lin Sun's answer was very calm. These two words made Qi Lingxiao and Saintess Lin Shui's eyes narrow. In the past, no one knew that there was a blood feud between Demon Lin and Yun Qingbai. But it is said that you and Yun Qingbai have mastered a certain kind of power of the Great Way. How did you become enemies? Qi Lingxiao was stunned. When I was born, my innate talent was taken away by someone, and that person was Yun Qingbai. Lin Sun's expression was still very calm. This was the first time that he had told the deepest secret in his heart since he started his cultivation. In the past, he was weak and in a worrying situation. He could only bear it and bury this hatred. But now, things had changed. He was no longer afraid of Yun Qingbai, so why should he bear it? This time, he wanted to make this secret known to the world through the mouths of Qi Lingxiao and Saintess Lin Shui. Think about it, when people knew that a peerless swordsman they respected or admired turned out to be a despicable and shameless robber, what would they think? Chapter 1297. The next day, Qi Lingxiao and Lin Shui left. Lin Sun began to meditate. Yesterday, he had successfully passed the 4th test of longevity, the 7 emotions ordeal. His realm had improved, and his strength had undergone a new transformation. All of this needed to be stabilized and sorted out. Old Toad and Big Black Bird were observing and studying the ancient patterns engraved on the walls of the 3000 pagoda. Back then, what Yun Qingbai had said was true. Although the Buddha Fan Earth was filled with unfathomable dangers, it also contained heaven-defying opportunities. The 3000 pagoda was built by the first holy Buddha in ancient times, and its origin was not simple. The original body of ancient Buddha had stayed and studied here. No one knew whether he had obtained the opportunity, but he had suffered a disaster after all. Yun Qingbai had also cultivated here, and once said that the opportunity in the 3000 pagoda was hidden in the 18 stone inscriptions on the 18 floors of the pagoda. Whether it was true or not, it could prove that there was a great mystery in the 3000 pagoda. As time went by, in the upper 9 realms, news about Yun Qingbai began to be mentioned. Anyone who knew the news was shocked and doubtful. When Demon Lin was born, his talent power was robbed, and the murderer was Yun Qingbai. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. As soon as this news came out, it caused an uproar. The reason why Yun Qingbai had today's achievements was actually related to the talent power he had robbed from Demon Lin. Who could have thought that? No wonder people said a long time ago that Demon Lin mastered some kind of terrible power of the Great Way, which is very similar to Yun Qingbai's. It turns out that there is such a secret behind it. Some strongmen were shocked. A kind of talent power made Yun Qingbai advance triumphantly on the road of Tao. It was unstoppable, and he had become a peerless figure in the upper 9 realms. Then, how terrifying was this innate power? I didn't expect that such a dazzling and peerless swordsman like Yun Qingbai would be so despicable. If this is true, he is too disgusting. Some people were filled with righteous indignation. Nonsense. This is a slander against Yun Qingbai. His intention is sinister, and he should be punished. But more than that, there were fierce rebuttals and disbelief. Yun Qingbai had been famous for a long time. Long before the arrival of the Forbidden Abyss Field, he had been regarded as the #1 sword cultivator of the young generation in the ancient Desolation realm, the #1 cultivator below the King realm. His reputation had been deeply rooted in people's hearts, and everyone in the world knew about him. Now, such a piece of news had spread. How could those experts who revered and admired Yun Qingbai dare to believe it? This was slandering. It's too despicable. Who spread the news? In order to raise Lin Sun's status and reputation, he stepped on Yun Qingbai. How shameless he is! Young Master Yun is like a deity. How could he be such a despicable person? This must be fake. Some of the women who adored Yun Qingbai were even more excited, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They felt that this was an insult to Yun Qingbai, and they absolutely could not tolerate it. Ridiculous! If his talent was taken away, how could Lin Sun survive? How could he have the strength he had today? Anyone with a discerning eye can see how ridiculous this news is. The sounds of discussion and uproar were endless in the upper 9 realms. This news was indeed too shocking. It involved 2 big shots who could turn the world upside down. One was a peerless overlord who ranked first on the Tianjiao Golden List, and the other was the invincible Demon Lin. The news of either of them was enough to attract the attention of the world, not to mention that this news was related to both of them. But in a word, most people did not believe it. In this world, there were too many groundless things. It was hard to believe that such a dazzling figure as Yun Qingbai could do such a cruel and despicable thing. But as the news spread, some reliable facts also came out. The news was told by Lin Sun himself, and Qiliang Shao and Lin Shui were witnesses. Not long ago, Yun Qingbai was hunted down by Lin Sun. Gu Fozhi died in a disaster. His talent was also robbed like Lin Sun, and the murderer was Yun Qingbai. When these verifiable news came out, the whole upper 9 realms was completely shocked. No matter if it was Qi Lingxiao or Saintess Lin Shui, both of them were outstanding talents amongst their peers. They were overlords who were ranked in the top 10 of the Prodigy Gold rankings, with 2 witnesses who could remain calm. Could it be that this is true? Some strong people who did not believe it could not help but be a little shaken under such a situation. Robbing talent and turning it into his own use. Thinking about the enemies that Yun Qingbai had killed, it seems that some of them had suffered such a fate. Don't forget that the mysterious power of the Great Way that Yun Qingbai mastered has an extremely terrible power of devouring and plundering. Maybe he can really do it. For a time, the impression of Yun Qinbai in the hearts of the strong people was still so powerful that they could only look up to him, but it was no longer so bright. Moreover, many people felt a chill in their hearts and began to fear Yun Qinbai. In such a situation, there were only two kinds of people who did not believe this news. One was Yun Qingbai's fans, who blindly believed that it was impossible for Yun Qinbai to do such a despicable thing. The other was the successor of the Heavenly Sword sect. This was easy to explain. After all, Yun Qinbai was the successor of the Heavenly Sword sect and a leader of the younger generation. As a fellow disciple, how could he believe this news? This is slander. What a shameless, despicable, and insidious demon God Lin. How dare he make irresponsible remarks and smear senior brother Yun's name? He deserves to be killed. Lin Sun, the Heavenly Sword sect will not coexist with you. They retorted with all their might and left behind harsh words. They wanted to settle accounts with Lin Sun and kill him, a shameless person who deceived the public with lies. In short, the Upper Nine Realms was completely boiling and the situation was changing. Everyone had a premonition that, regardless of whether the news was true or not, Lin Sun and Yun Qinbai were destined to be mortal enemies from now on. Just wait and see. Sooner or later, there will be a fight to the death between the two. Someone made a prophecy and received the approval of the majority. In the land of Pagoda, the area in front of the 3,000 pagoda became more and more lively than before. Originally, this was a place of great danger, full of murderous intent. However, as the news about the grudge between Lin Sun and Yun Qinbai spread recently, it also attracted many cultivators to come and investigate. Outside the 3,000 pagoda, Lin Sun had already set up a Taoist restriction formation. Because everyone knew that Lin Sun was very likely to be in the 3,000 pagoda, almost no one dared to barge in. This was power. In the current Upper Nine Realms, Lin Sun's name had long been known by everyone. There was no enmity between them. As long as one was not stupid, no one dared to offend him easily. Therefore, although there were many experts who came to the Buddha land to inquire about the news, no one had actually been able to come into contact with Lin Sun. They could only choose to wait. At the same time, in various areas of the Upper Nine Realms, there were also many experts from various forces searching for and inquiring about Yun Qingbai's traces. They all wanted to know how Yun Qinbai would react when faced with this news. Moreover, those who paid attention discovered that Yun Qingbai's position as the first on the heaven's chosen golden list had never changed. But at the same time, some people also discovered that Lin Sun's name had not appeared on the heaven's chosen golden list even once after all these years. The outside world was unpredictable, but inside the 3,000 pagoda, Lin Sun had already completely stabilized the power of the fourth tribulation of longevity realm. He had complete control over it and could use it perfectly as if it was his own arm. If I had this power before I met Yun Qinbai, how could I have let him escape? On this day, Lin Sun woke up from his meditation, his eyes deep and quiet. The fourth tribulation of longevity realm had already entered the threshold of the 6 disasters. According to the previous classification of realms in the ancient desolation realm, he could be considered the backbone of the entire 9th tribulation of longevity realm. However, the immortality realm of a top king was different. With my current combat strength, if I go all out, it shouldn't be difficult for me to kill a top 5th tribulation of longevity realm cultivator. Lin Sun analyzed carefully. As for ordinary kings of longevity realm, Lin Sun had automatically ignored them. They were not on the same path at all, so there was no comparison to speak of. If he wanted to, with his current combat strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to kill ordinary 7th tribulation kings of longevity realm. Of course, this was only Lin Sun's own estimation. The specific situation could only be deeply and intuitively understood in battle. I can start refining the innate clarity pearl. Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat, and he closed his eyes again. In his body, a clear pearl the size of a pigeon's egg was floating above the origin Tao seed. It was flowing with chaotic energy and was enshrouded in Tao light. According to Xian Kong, the innate clarity pearl was formed from the origin power of the connate holy treasure, the city of the wronged. Its origin was extremely shocking. In Lin Sun's perception, the innate clarity pearl emitted wisps of innate clear qi. It was indescribably mysterious, and it had the effect of nourishing one's cultivation, soul, and state of mind. This was because the qi was formed from merit. Originally, Lin Sun wanted to ask the big black bird if it recognized the origin of this item. However, senior brother Xian Kong had warned him not to let others see this item. As for the reason, he didn't say. Without thinking too much, Lin Sun calmed his mind and concentrated. He circulated his cultivation and began to refine the innate clarity pearl. Immediately, Lin Sun felt his divine sense tremble. It was as if a majestic, sacred, and ancient divine city had appeared in his mind. The divine city was boundlessly brilliant and flowed with divine radiance. It was filled with an eternal aura, and it resided in the heavens and the earth as if it could connect the mortal world and the land of reincarnation. The obscure and vast ancient sound of the Tao was like the sacrificial chant of the ancient people, and it reverberated in his mind and shook his soul. In his days, Lin Sun seemed to see numerous souls, broken thoughts, specters, and spirits being led over from within the divine city, and they converged on an altar at the center of the city. After that, they were expiated, freed, and vanished at the same time. Along with the disappearance of those souls, strands of innate clear qi appeared and fused into the walls, ground, and buildings of the city, causing the city to seem even more magnificent and brilliant. The aura of divinity connected the heavens and the earth and illuminated the galaxy. This city was called the Wronged. Chapter 1298. It took a long time for Lin Sun to wake up from the amazing scene. In his heart, all kinds of wonderful insights emerged, all of which were related to the primordial holy treasure, City of the Vain. The most wonderful thing about this city was that it could guide the remaining ghosts and souls to free themselves from the world and obtain the power of merit from the order of nature. Merit, like fate, cause, and effect, it was an extremely mysterious power of nothingness. In the eyes of Buddhist practitioners, saving a life was better than building a 7-storied pagoda. In fact, it was also a means to accumulate the power of merit. For practitioners, the power of merit was like the luck of the Great Way, but it was more beneficial to their cultivation. For example, congenital clear qi was a kind of embodiment of the power of merit. Refining congenital clear qi was beneficial to the cultivation, soul and state of mind of practitioners. It could be imagined how magical and mysterious the primordial holy treasure, City of the Vain, which could obtain the power of merit, was. It was a pity that the primordial holy treasure, City of the Vain, had long been gone, leaving only a strand of congenital essence, which turned into this primordial clear pearl. In short, the primordial clear pearl was the core power of the primordial clear pearl. Lin Sun began to refine it with full concentration. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, unknowingly, time had already quietly passed. In the pagoda, Old Toad and the big black bird were not idle. They had been studying and trying to figure out the mystery of the pagoda. After a long time of exploration, they both came to the same conclusion. There must be a great opportunity in this pagoda. However, they needed an opportunity to get it. Presently, both of them were trying to use various methods to probe it, and they intended to seize this fortuitous encounter in one go. It took Lin Sun half a year to refine this primordial clear pearl. Even Lin Sun himself was a little surprised that it took such a long time, but the benefits were also extremely amazing, which even made Lin Sun excited. In the primordial clear pearl, there was a vast and boundless power of merit. When practicing, the primordial clear pearl could continuously provide congenital clear qi, which was like adding merit to one's body, mind, and soul. If that was all, then it was no different from some of the cultivation treasures in the world. The most miraculous aspect of the natural clarity pearl was that it was capable of innately restraining some peerlessly formidable remnant consciousnesses and spirits. On the other hand, if he was able to draw these spirits out, then he would be able to obtain the energy of virtue and converge it within the innate clarity pearl, causing this treasure to undergo a transformation. Lin Sun even suspected that the congenital purity bead would degenerate into the city of the wronged again when the accumulated power of merit reached a certain level. No wonder Senior Brother Xian Kong specially instructed me not to allow this treasure to be known by others. It really is a peerlessly rare and precious treasure. It's not only a cultivation treasure, but it's also a sacred object that can obtain merit. It's far from being comparable to other battle-type sacred treasures. Although it is incomplete, as long as I continue to cultivate, there will definitely be hope for this treasure to become the city of the wronged again. Lin Sun took a deep breath and suppressed the excitement in his heart. Was it worth it to spend half a year refining the innate clarity pearl? It was so worth it. Possessing this treasure was equivalent to possessing the most effective method to obtain the energy of merit, and it possessed an immeasurable effect towards his cultivation. It was too wonderful for words. Lin Sun, you've finally come to your senses. In this past half a year, some reckless fellows have come to provoke you every single day, and they're clamoring to ask you to leave. The large black bird flapped its wings as it flew over and cried out. If you still don't leave, then they'll probably barge in by force. Looking for me? Lin Sun raised his brows. Yes, since I found out about the enmity between you and Yun Qinbai, the area outside the pagoda has become a place where a storm converges. You don't know how bustling it has been in the past half a year. The large black bird said, especially the disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect. They've been waiting there since a few months ago, and they seem as if they intend to guard the pagoda until your appearance. Lin Sun instantly came to an understanding because this sort of situation was within his expectations. If they're willing to wait, then let them continue waiting. Lin Sun said casually, I've set up a Tao marking restriction formation outside the pagoda. So long as they're not afraid of death, then they can feel free to barge in by force. Bang! Suddenly, a wave of violent shaking sounded out from outside the pagoda, and it was like an earthquake. After that, a wave of excited cheers sounded out. This damnable grand formation is finally about to be broken through. Everyone, let's work harder. Humph. This Lin Sun is a coward. He hasn't even dared to show himself after hiding for half a year. So long as we break through this formation, let's see how he continues hiding. Chaotic noises began to spread into the Buddha's pagoda. A wisp of coldness instantly appeared on Lin Sun's face. The Tao marking restriction formation he'd set up had the effect of isolating sound wave. But now, sounds had entered, and it could be seen that the formation was indeed severely damaged and was about to be broken through. The large black bird took pleasure in Lin Sun's misfortune and laughed. Ha ha ha! Those who aren't afraid of death are about to charge in. Lin Sun suffered a setback and was speechless. He just said that if they weren't afraid of death, then they could feel free to barge in by force. Yet as soon as he finished speaking, such a thing had occurred, and it was simply like a slap to the face. I'll go take a look. Lin Sun stood up and left with a murderous aura. Outside the pagoda, the group of disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect moved together, and they were attacking the Tao marking restriction formation that enveloped the pagoda. A rain of light scattered, and the roar was like thunder. In the distance, Wen Zhongfeng's expression was indifferent, and he was already standing on a silver sword-shaped lotus platform. He was dressed in a golden robe, and his aura was fierce like that of a god. In the Heavenly Sword sect, the most dazzling one was Yun Qinbai, but few people knew Wen Zhongfeng's name. But only those who knew the inside story knew that compared to Yun Qinbai, Wen Zhongfeng might not be famous, but his combat strength was absolutely terrifying. Even if he wasn't as good as Yun Qinbai, he wasn't far behind. When Zhongfeng was an ancient freak, he was silent in ancient times and awakened in this world. Whether it was his background or talent, he could be said to be amazing. The reason why he wasn't famous was that he was completely overshadowed by Yun Qinbai. So the world only knew Yun Qinbai, but they didn't know that there was a terrifying figure like Wen Zhongfeng in the Heavenly Sword sect. At this time, there were several disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect following Wen Zhongfeng, which made him look even more extraordinary. In the darkness in the distance, there were also countless eyes watching all this closely. Over the past 6 months, with the spread of the news about Lin Sun and Yun Qinbai, the Buddha land had become a whirlpool of attention in the upper 9 realms. In front of the Buddha Tower, it was also very lively. Although Lin Sun hadn't appeared once in the past 6 months, it still couldn't stop those strong people from all directions from coming to inquire about the news. Of course, there were many experts that were impatient from waiting and had left long ago, but there were even more experts that came over, causing the area before the Buddha's pagoda to seem like a place where a storm converged. When Zhongfeng and other disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect arrived here 2 months ago, their purpose was very simple. They couldn't tolerate the slander of Yun Qinbai in the news, so they wanted to kill Lin Sun and strangle all adverse effects on the Heavenly Sword sect. However, they had waited for a long time and repeatedly asked Lin Sun to show up. Unfortunately, their wish had never been fulfilled. This made these disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect have accumulated a lot of anger but nowhere to vent it. Until these days, when Zhongfeng finally decided not to wait any longer. He launched an attack to break the formation, enter the Buddha Tower, and kill Lin Sun. It was also today that they had been waiting for the hope and opportunity to break the formation. As soon as the formation is broken, you will follow me into the Buddha Tower and kill Lin Sun, the coward. When Zhongfeng transmitted his voice to them, others nodded secretly. Half a year ago, there was news that Yun Qinbai was chased by Lin Sun, which made them furious and subconsciously didn't believe the news at all. Therefore, they didn't believe that Lin Sun could be Yun Qingbai's opponent at all. Of course, in the face of Lin Sun, who was now famous in the upper 9 realms, they naturally didn't dare to be careless. Otherwise, they wouldn't have waited here for 2 months. But as time went by, no matter how they provoked, cursed, and invited him to fight, Lin Sun didn't show up, which made them sullen and disdainful. Was the dignified demon Lin afraid to fight? In this way, how could the news spread half a year ago be true? In fact, this doubt also emerged in the hearts of the strong people who were secretly watching all this. It had been half a year, but Lin Sun had been hiding in the Buddha Tower. No matter how he was cursed and provoked, he had never appeared. Was he afraid? Or the news that came out half a year ago was false? Otherwise, how could he choose not to show up under such a situation? It should be known that he, Demon Lin, had always been known for his courage. When had he ever been so timid and afraid? When this formation is broken, the truth will be revealed. At this moment, everyone was looking forward to it, because they could see that the forbidden formation in front of the Buddha Tower was about to be broken. Boom! Suddenly, in front of the Buddha Tower, there was a violent roar. In the rain of light, the Taoist forbidden formation that was on the verge of collapse was not broken, but the descendants of the heaven-reaching sword sect who besieged the formation all cried out in alarm and staggered back. This scene immediately attracted the attention of all the people present. At this moment, all eyes saw that in the Taoist forbidden formation where the rain of light was flying, a tall and handsome figure walked out. His black hair was loose, his cold eyes were deep, and his bearing was like that of an immortal. Who else could it be but Lin Sun? After hiding for half a year, he finally showed up at this moment. There was a sudden commotion in the field. However, everyone was not optimistic about Lin Sun, because he was forced to come out. If the formation was not about to be broken, he would probably choose to hide. At the same time, Wen Zhongfeng and the other descendants of the heaven-reaching sword sect were also shocked at first, and then they were ecstatic. The guy who had deceived the public with lies and slandered Yun Qi Bai with despicable means had finally appeared. For a moment, their eyes were cold and murderous. The anger that had accumulated in their hearts for many days made them restless. Yun Qi Bai didn't come, but a group of clowns came. The more ignorant you are, the more reckless you are. In this restless and tense atmosphere, Lin Sun walked out of the formation alone. His black eyes were deep and his voice was calm, but it clearly resounded between heaven and earth. Chapter 1299. A clown? The eyes of Wen Zhongfeng and others became colder and colder. Since they came here in large numbers, they were naturally well prepared. But they didn't expect that Lin Sun, who they regarded as a coward, dared to boast so shamelessly. Lin Sun, do you know who you are talking to? Someone shouted. Some strong people in the dark also gasped. Although Wen Zhongfeng was not famous, he was also a ruthless man who ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List. If he was not overshadowed by Yun Qi Bai, Wen Zhongfeng could be called the leader of the younger generation of the heaven-reaching sword sect with his strong combat capability. But now Lin Sun regarded him as a clown. Plop! A horrible thing happened. Lin Sun didn't take any action, but the successor of the heaven-reaching sword sect, who had just rebuked Lin Sun, died on the spot. Anyone who is my master's enemy deserves to die. Silver's figure emerged with a cold look. All the people present were silent. Lin Sun started to kill without saying a word? Those successors of the heaven-reaching sword sect all trembled in their hearts, and their faces changed slightly. Who would have thought that such a thing would happen under such circumstances? In the past, as long as Yun Qi Bai was in charge, no one in the upper 9 realms dared to provoke the heaven-reaching sword sect, no matter what force. How dare you? When Zhongfeng's face darkened, and his voice was terribly cold. A bunch of idiots. Yun Qi Bai didn't come here, but you rushed to die first. In terms of courage, I am not as good as you. Lin Sun looked calm. Senior brother Wen, this man is rampant and lawless. There's no need to talk nonsense with him. It's better to kill him immediately. A woman looked angry and her voice was shrill. Puff. This time, Lin Sun moved as if he had teleported. With a light touch of his fingertips, the woman's snow-white goose neck was crushed. What a stupid woman. Everyone knows that I am hiding in the Buddha Tower. How can Yun Qi Bai not know? But don't you find it strange that he hasn't come in the past 6 months? When the voice sounded, Lin Sun had returned to his original place. Everyone present felt an inexplicable chill in their heart. When they looked at Lin Sun again, their eyes had all changed. In particular, Lin Sun's words made them suddenly realize that if the news was false, why could Yun Qi Bai endure until now and not take action? He was an overlord that was ranked at the top of the Prodigy Gold rankings, and he was an invincible existence. According to his past style of doing things, how could he possibly refrain from making a move? What a joke! Why would junior brother Yun need to do anything to deal with you? When Zhongfeng's voice became even colder as he stepped forward. Watching 2 of his fellow disciples die before his eyes completely infuriated him. A boundlessly terrifying killing intent spread out from his body like a storm, causing the heavens and the earth to tremble. The other successors of the heavenly sword sect also took action. They took out their treasures, and their auras became murderous as they locked onto Lin Sun. However, at this moment, Lin Sun's eyes were still emotionless. Kill! With a roar, Wen Zhongfeng, who had been accumulating strength for a long time, suddenly broke out. His sword qi broke out like a brilliant sun. There was no doubt that Wen Zhongfeng was very strong. He had already reached the fulfillment of the four-tribulation of longevity realm. In the upper 9 realms, he was also one of the few giants at the overlord level. His sword qi was fierce, blazing, and domineering. Its momentum alone overwhelmed the whole audience, making countless people's faces change and souls throb. But under this blow, Lin Sun's figure disappeared out of thin air. Puff! The next moment, a successor of the Heavenly Sword sect was killed. His throat was red, and then hot blood burst out like a waterfall. Even before he died, he still looked confused because he hadn't really made a move yet. Damn you! There was a commotion in the field, especially when Zhongfeng, who was even more furious and full of killing intent. Kill! Those successors of the Heavenly Sword sect also went all out with red eyes. But Lin Sun didn't seem to feel all this. His face was calm, and his figure was illusory. He seemed to be moving slowly, but in fact, he was extremely fast. In the field, there were only shadows like bubbles. Puff! An expert's sword chi was sharp and slashed Lin Sun. He was so excited that he was about to shout, but he was shocked to find that it was just an afterimage of Lin Sun. Oh no! His heart skipped a beat, and then he felt his eyes go black. His neck was twisted off, and even his divine soul exploded. In the distance, the spectators felt cold all over, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Lin Sun was so calm and peaceful as if he was taking a stroll in a courtyard. But no matter what kind of attack was launched, it couldn't touch him. Everywhere he went, there were only corpses left. Lin Sun, do you dare to fight with me? When Zhongfeng's eyes were about to pop out, and his breath was burning. He was about to go berserk. Puff! Before his voice died away, another successor of the Heavenly Sword sect was killed. Blood splashed and dyed the void red. And Lin Sun's figure had already disappeared. Looking from a distance, Lin Sun's figure was everywhere in the field, but no one could tell which one was the real him. There was only a single reason. His speed was so swift that it had already attained a world-shocking degree. There were about 20 successors of the Heavenly Sword sect who came this time, but 6 of them had been killed just a moment after the battle broke out. Each of these 6 people was a peerless figure in the longevity tribulation realm who could take charge of an area on their own. But under Lin Sun's attack, they were at the mercy of Lin Sun. The extremely bloody scenes caused the experts in the shadows to be dumbstruck on the spot. Only when they saw it with their own 2 eyes were they able to deeply understand how terrifying this infamous devil god Lin was, and he couldn't be described by convention at all. Puff! 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 In the following time, more corpses fell to the ground one after another. At the moment of death, their faces were full of anger, confusion, unwillingness, and so on. Were they willing to be killed? Wrong. It was because they completely underestimated the horror of Lin Sun. In the past 6 months, although Lin Sun had been concentrating on refining the innate clarity pearl, he'd absorbed an unknown amount of innate clear chi during the process of refining this treasure, and his cultivation, soul, and state of mind had been constantly improving and improving. Moreover, he cultivated the great nether magic and possessed 3 spirit clones. At the same time that he refined the innate clarity pearl, he was deducing martial arts and comprehending the power of the Great Way. Up to now, even the 3 powers of the Great Way of Immortality, Tai Chi, and Star Obliteration and Devouring Sky had attained perfection, and the breakthrough was only a matter of time. In terms of martial arts, he'd already comprehended 20% of the profundity of the sword move no return. Although it was only 20%, its might could be said to be extraordinary, and it was sufficient to shock the heavens and the earth. It should be known that when he fought Yun Qin by that day, he'd only comprehended 10% of the profundity of the sword move no return. At this moment, not to mention killing an ordinary longevity giant, it wasn't a problem for him to cross realms to kill someone with a higher cultivation than him. It could be said that when Zhongfeng and the others came at a bad time, and they deserved to be unlucky. They thought they'd made sufficient preparations, but they didn't know that Lin Sun was much stronger than he was half a year ago. Of course, the most fundamental reason was that from the beginning to the end, they didn't believe that Lin Sun had ever chased after Yun Qin Bai. If they didn't believe it, It was easy to underestimate the opponent. For Lin Sun, this naturally became an ignorant and stupid behavior. Lin Sun, you coward, why don't you dare to fight me head-on? In the field, Wen Zhongfeng's voice was hoarse. He'd gone mad completely. His face was distorted, and his heart was burning with anger. Watching helplessly as one fellow disciple after another fell, how could they possibly feel good about it? Unfortunately, Lin Sun didn't pay attention to him from the beginning to the end. Finally, someone couldn't bear such a blow, and his fighting spirit was destroyed by fear. He let out a loud cry and fled madly. Humans all have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Faced with the threat of death, who would sit still and wait for death? Puff! The broken sword swept out and gently cut through the void. The escaping figure was cut in half at the waist, and blood poured out like a rainstorm. But Lin Sun didn't even look at it. The strong people in the dark all had a strong urge to vomit. They were stimulated by the bloody and cold scenes, and they trembled all over. It was terrible. In the past 6 months, the outside world had been waiting for Lin Sun to show up. They even suspected that Lin Sun was afraid and could only hide in the slaughter tower, not daring to face the outside world. But now, people understood that it was not that Lin Sun was afraid, but that he didn't pay attention to those clamoring voices from the beginning to the end. The dragon in the sky wouldn't pay attention to the clamoring of the ants on the ground, unless these ants were reckless enough to stroke the dragon's whiskers. Screams, wails, and panicked screams were mixed with the sound of blood splashing and mutilated bodies falling to the ground. The scene was like a bloody purgatory. It was a soul-stirring and ghastly sight. Lin Sun, you? Wen Zhongfeng had been roaring with bloodshot eyes and madness. But at this time, his voice stopped abruptly. Because he was the only one left in the field. But Lin Sun was looking at them from a distance with his black eyes, and he was walking forward. Wen Zhongfeng's heart suddenly trembled, and his anger and hatred were completely sobered up as if a basin of cold water had been poured on him. Only then did he realize a problem. If he was strong enough to stop Lin Sun, why did he need to roar and ask Lin Sun to fight with him head-on? In the final analysis, he was not as powerful as Lin Sun. And the previous roars were also a manifestation of powerlessness and helplessness. Stat, stat, stat. Lin Sun's footsteps landed on the ground at a moderate speed. His footsteps were not loud, but they were clearly heard by everyone in the dead silent atmosphere, like a bell from hell. Wen Zhongfeng's face changed constantly. Seeing Lin Sun approaching step by step, a kind of oppressive aura rushed towards him, almost suffocating him. Wen Zhongfeng had never felt the aura of death so clearly and intensely before. It was like a sharp blade that was right before his eyes. With a thud, he took a step back subconsciously. It was just a step, but it was earth-shattering, because it proved that Wen Zhongfeng was already terrified before the fight started. Thinking of the scene where he clamored for Lin Sun to fight with him again, and comparing it with his current appearance, everyone in the field couldn't help but be in a trance. Had Demon Lin become so powerful that he could suppress Wen Zhongfeng, a peerless figure ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List, with his power alone? P.S. This plot is stupid because you are watching from the perspective of God. As an opponent who doesn't believe in the strength of the protagonist, it is normal for him to do such a stupid thing. Chapter 1300. In the previous chapter, the Devouring Star Way and the Immortal Way were written incorrectly. Both of them were Tao laws and had been corrected. All of a sudden, when Zhongfeng's face turned red with shame and indignation, he retreated. There was no need for him to say anything at all. It was enough to prove that fear had already arisen in the depths of his heart. "I'll kill you!" When Zhongfeng roared, completely crazy. He couldn't admit it. In other words, this step back was like a great shame, which greatly stimulated him and made him unable to keep his mind. Whoosh! A peerlessly dazzling sword chi swept out like a divine rainbow that swept through the universe. However, these resistance were doomed to be futile. Lin Sun might have to use some means to deal with Wen Zhongfeng, who was in his peak state. But if he was dealing with Wen Zhongfeng, who had lost his mind, there was no threat or suspense at all. In just a moment, Wen Zhongfeng was killed by Duan Ren with the profound meaning of impermanence cut. His head was cut open and his spirit collapsed. There was a dead silence in the field. All the heroes were stunned. The elites of the heaven-reaching sword sect were wiped out by Lin Sun today. Even Wen Zhongfeng, an ancient freak who ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List, was killed. This was something that no one could have predicted before. At this moment, looking at Lin Sun's spotless figure in the field, everyone had a thought in their mind. Now, who in the upper 9 realms could stop the power of Demon Lin? On this day, the news about this battle spread and the upper 9 realms was shocked. The heaven-reaching sword sect is finished, some major forces sighed. In the past, because of Yun Qinbai, the heaven-reaching sword sect was like an overlord that no one dared to provoke. No one dared to go against them and could only retreat. But now everything had changed. Half a year has passed. Lin Sun appeared and killed all the strong men of the heaven-reaching sword sect, showing his invincible combat power. But Yun Qinbai hasn't shown up yet. If he knows the news, can he continue to bear it? Some people were surprised and doubtful. This was very abnormal. According to Yun Qingbai's character, how could he bear such a great shame? While the outside world was in turmoil, the area around the pagoda had become a forbidden land. No one dared to approach it, because they all knew that Lin Sun was cultivating in the 3000 pagoda. Furthermore, he was not afraid of others knowing that he was here. It was as if he had been waiting for Yun Qinbai to come knocking on his door. This kind of attitude in itself was a kind of invisible disdainful might, which was very frightening. However, to everyone's surprise, as time passed, Yun Qinbai never appeared. His injuries are very severe. Even if he recovers, I'm afraid he won't dare to come looking for me immediately because he will definitely not be able to tolerate suffering a second failure. Only Lin Sun knew that Yun Qinbai would not make a comeback in a short time. He even concluded that Yun Qinbai would only reappear in the eyes of the world when he was fully prepared. At that time, the day of his duel with Yun Qinbai would definitely not be too far away. There is no 60-year cycle in the mountains, one does not know the year. Regardless of whether it was cultivators or ordinary people, it was impossible to change the passage of time. As the saying goes, heaven and earth are like a journey in reverse, and time is just a passerby. It had been a year since Lin Sun killed Wen Zhongfeng. During this year, the atmosphere in the upper 9 regions became more and more turbulent. Bloody killings and ruthless competitions were staged everywhere. Like a giant force, it had fallen in the smoke of war. There were also some top figures who were unknown before, but they rose like comets in this year and attracted the attention of the upper 9 regions. Some people cried, some people laughed, some people were frustrated, and some people were proud. All kinds of joys and sorrows, love and hate, were staged in the upper 9 regions. Some people were happy and some people were sad. During this year, the top 100 of the Tianjiao Golden List also changed at a stunning speed, which was too much for the eyes to take in. The king's flag changed at the top of the city wall. But only Yun Qingbai's position as the first place had never been shaken. Similarly, Lin's name had never appeared on the Tianjiao Golden List. Moreover, there was no more news about Lin Sun in the past year, because he had been practicing in seclusion in the slaughter tower. This year was the 7th year since the Absolute Domain came to the ancient Desolation Domain. There were less than 3 years left before the battle of the Absolute Domain. The wind and rain were gloomy and the white bones were piled up. After a year of changes, the Buddha land returned to its former silence and calmness. In the end, this was the Buddha lands, a place of great danger and ominous danger. Not everyone had the ability to stay here for long periods of time. A deafening battle sound rang out. Sharp sword chi crisscrossed, tearing the void and shooting at the sky, which made the wind and clouds change color. A snow-white broken blade shuttled back and forth, fighting fiercely with the dense and terrifying sword Qi. Looking carefully, a handsome figure was fighting. His black hair fluttered in the wind, revealing a handsome and determined face. His figure was brilliant, flowing with bright Taoist light. A great abyss Dharma Laksana appeared behind him, as if it could swallow the world. This person was Lin Sun. His opponent was a snow-white human skeleton, standing there, with a spine as straight as a sword. Every inch of the skeleton was branded with the sharpness of the sword will. During the fierce battle, every time Lin Sun rushed to destroy the skeleton, there would be a sky full of sword Qi sweeping out, and it had the power to reach the heavens and was unparalleled. This was the skeleton of the Sword Saint. The doppelganger of ancient Buddha once said that this was the skeleton of a sword saint in the great Luo ancient domain. In order to kill this person, the first holy Buddha in the ancient times suffered serious injuries. Finally, when the 3,000 pagoda was built, the holy Buddha passed away. From this, it could be imagined how powerful the skeleton of the sword saint was when he was still alive. The skeleton stood between heaven and earth, and after countless years of wear and tear, its spine did not bend a bit, and the sword Qi branded on the skeleton was not completely erased. However, now the skeleton of the sword saint had become a target for Lin Sun to practice martial arts. Boom! With a deafening roar, the skeleton of the sword saint finally trembled a little, as if it was about to be shaken and fall down. Clang! At this time, Lin Sun put away the broken sword and thought silently, "In 3 months at most, I will be able to defeat the skeleton of the sword saint and refine the power branded on it." Over the past year, Lin Sun's cultivation had also advanced by leaps and bounds. Now, he had crossed the 5th test of longevity, the 6 desires disaster, and reached the perfect stage of the 5th test of longevity. His own combat power had already undergone earth-shaking changes. In the cultivation of Tao, all the Tao he had mastered had reached the level of Tao law. Even the cultivation of his soul had reached the unprecedented level of divine flower gathering in one's head. But because of the limitation of his own cultivation, he could no longer break through. Above divine flower gathering in one's head was the state of spirit wander and spirit transformation, which belonged to the category of saint realm. It was obscure and difficult for Lin Sun to understand and touch it at present. Even so, in the whole longevity realm, the strength of Lin Sun's soul was enough to be unparalleled in this realm, because his spirit was divided into 3 parts, which was different from the others. Apart from this, there was the transformation of his martial power. More than a year ago, Xiankong Sage had guided Lin Sun to enter the spirit realm in one fell swoop. Now, whether it was deducing the 9 strikes for shaking heaven, the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon, the 6 strikes of Tian Yuan, or the great divination void-breaking finger, he could easily reach the spirit realm. According to the division of realms, it could be included in the spirit realm. This series of transformations were all comprehended in this year's closed-door training. However, the key to the breakthrough in such a short time was the nourishing effect of congenital purity bead. This treasure was absolutely a holy object for cultivation, which saved Lin Sun a lot of time and energy when he cultivated. Whoosh! Lin Sun exhaled a long breath of turbid air and was about to leave. Suddenly, a transparent figure came from the distance. "Master, I have passed the 2nd test of longevity." It was Little Silver. However, the little guy's cold and handsome face was full of excitement and joy at the moment. Over the past year, Little Silver's progress could be described as amazing. Perhaps he was far inferior to Lin Sun in terms of realm, but he was the first spirit-eating insect king to set foot in the Dying King realm. Coupled with his inherent terrifying talent, it was no problem for him to kill enemies of higher realms. Even with Lin Sun's current strength, if he was attacked by Little Silver, he had to go all out. Good. Lin Sun was very satisfied. In the beginning, in order to cultivate Little Silver, he had to spend a lot of time and energy to collect treasures for Little Silver to advance. But in recent years it was completely unnecessary. Because Little Silver had the ability to improve himself on his own, his path of cultivation was also unique, and he needed to explore it by himself. Even Lin Sun couldn't help him. "Master, when are we leaving here?" Little Silver asked. "Wait a little longer." Lin Sun had his own ideas. As he spoke, he had already returned to the 3,000 pagoda with Little Silver. As soon as they entered the pagoda, they heard a burst of wild laughter. "Ha ha ha, God didn't let me down. I finally figured out a trace of the mystery of these 18 stone inscriptions." It was Old Toad's voice. Lin Sun's spirit was lifted, and he couldn't help sighing with emotion. Old Toad and the big black bird had been studying and exploring together for more than a year. Both of them were convinced that the great fortune hidden in the 3,000 pagoda was in the 18 stone inscriptions. But it was only today that they heard the good news from Old Toad. It should be known that Old Toad was a descendant of the three-legged golden toad, and was born to recognize all things and understand the past and present. The big black bird wasn't simple either, and knew many incredible secrets, but it took them more than a year to discover the mystery. It could be imagined that such a great fortune could be hidden so deeply. And how much effort did Old Toad and the big black bird put into this? Without hesitation, Lin Sun hurried up to the 18th floor. He saw Old Toad and the big black bird, their eyes shining, staring excitedly at the stone inscriptions on a wall. They looked like a lecherous, hungry ghost who had just come out of the bath, rubbing their palms, ready to make a move. "What did you find?" Lin Sun walked over and asked curiously. Chapter 1301. On the wall, the 18 stone Taoist diagrams were different. Some were engraved with the state of all living beings in the mortal world, some were scenes of subduing demons, some were images of galaxies rolling backward, mountains and rivers destroyed, and some were. Each Taoist diagram was mysterious and unpredictable. Lin Sun had also studied them, but he couldn't see through the mystery hidden in them. "Lin Sun, you came at the right time. Now I can tell you clearly that there is a secret inheritance hidden in these stone Taoist diagrams." Old Toad's golden eyes were shining, and he was in high spirits as he said excitedly. As he spoke, he pointed at a Tao diagram on the wall and said, "Look at this diagram. Mountains and rivers have been destroyed, and rivers of stars have been reversed. It's a scene of ruin and destruction. However, the true secret is not in the scene depicted on this diagram, but in the markings on the stone." He stretched out his finger and sketched along the traces of the Taoist diagram. Soon, Lin Sun was moved, because the traces outlined by Old Toad's finger, if pieced together, were a line of stacked ancient handwriting. "Kill as the Buddha's heart, why should we return to the eternal dust?" Like a Buddhist hymn, there was a great spirit contained in it. Do you see it? But if it's so simple, how can it take more than a year for me and Old Hay to study it? Old Toad appeared very pleased with himself, spittle flying everywhere. This line of words is in the ancient Mahayana Sanskrit. If you dismantle the traces of the imprints one by one, you will see traces of a Tao pattern that is completely natural. Taoist trace, the manifestation of the Great Way, imprinted with the breath of the Great Way. As he said, Old Toad's fingertips sketched one by one in the void. Spread these Taoist traces and feel them again. Lin Sun's divine awareness swept out and compared the stone Taoist diagram with the trace of Old Toad's fingertip. Suddenly, a wonderful scene happened. In the stone Taoist diagram, there seemed to be a sacred Buddha light, which turned into a figure walking between heaven and earth. Wherever it passed, mountains and rivers were destroyed, galaxies rolled backward, and all things collapsed. At the same time, a magnificent and solemn Sanskrit sound resounded. "Kill as the Buddha's heart, why should we return to the eternal dust?" As the voice fell, inside the Taoist diagram, traces of stone carvings converged and turned into a golden Buddha symbol, flowing with sacred brilliance. Lin Sun's heart trembled fiercely. He felt an extremely magical breath of inheritance from the Buddhist runes. This is only a part of the inheritance. As Old Toad spoke, its fingertips closed, and the stone Tao diagram instantly returned to its original appearance. Look at this stone inscription Tao diagram. The mysteries within it are different. You need to use your mind to reflect the diagram within and use your divine soul to deduce the number of heavenly cycles described within. There is also this stone Tao diagram. It is different. Its mysteries require one to decipher it with the power of the great Tao. Old Toad explained to Lin Sun one by one. To put it simply, the mysteries hidden within these 18 stone inscription Tao diagrams were all completely different and required different methods to decipher them. Lin Sun felt a headache coming on and clicked his tongue secretly. It was too complicated and obscure. If he was Old Toad or the Big Blackbird, he wouldn't necessarily be able to decipher the mysteries of the 18 stone Tao diagrams one by one in a year. Now, the Big Blackbird is deciphering the remaining 3 stone inscription Tao diagrams. If nothing goes wrong, it will definitely decipher this heaven-defying creation within 3 months. Old Toad was in high spirits, full of expectation as if it had been injected with chicken blood. Lin Sun looked up and saw the Big Blackbird standing in front of a stone inscription Tao diagram, as if possessed. It looked focused and meticulous, as if it had completely forgotten itself. From beginning to end, it didn't notice the conversation between Lin and Old Toad at all. By the way, congenital clear chi has been used up. You have to collect more, said Old Toad. Lin Sun casually threw a sealed jade bottle to Old Toad. I knew it would be like this. Take it. Old Toad grinned and didn't stand on ceremony. Over the past year, they had been staying in the slaughter tower. The royal medicine and divine medicine on them had long been used up. They relied on Lin Sun's continuous collection of congenital clear chi to support them. This was the distress of practitioners in the longevity tribulation realm. The higher the realm, the more power they needed for cultivation. Without sufficient cultivation resources, they were bound to stagnate. However, Lin Sun wasn't worried about this at the moment. At least in the Buddha land, if he wanted to, he could obtain a steady stream of congenital clear chi. There were many dangerous and terrible areas in the Buddha land, such as the land of tragic death and the Buddha land, which had appeared at the beginning. In addition, there were also some strange and ominous areas. Over the past year, Lin Sun's footprints had been everywhere. One was to collect some cultivation resources, and the other was to collect congenital clear chi. The Broken Demon Cave. It was located under a turbid river of white bones in the Buddha land. The cave was filled with extremely terrifying origin magnetic baleful chi, and every night, peerlessly miserable howls of demons and devils would resound out, causing one to feel a chill run down one's spine. For other practitioners, this was definitely a forbidden place that they didn't dare to set foot in easily. But for Lin Sun, it was an excellent place to collect congenital clear chi. Whoosh! On this day, Lin Sun floated to the river and wielded his broken sword. With a roar, the turbid river full of white bones was suddenly separated, revealing a hole as big as a ravine. Jet black origin magnetic baleful chi seethed within the hole, and it emanated a terrifying aura. One could clearly see numerous damaged souls, resentment, and spirits brandishing their claws and howling sharply within it, and they emanated a monstrous and ferocious aura. But when Lin Sun ran the Dharma scripture and emitted solemn and holy Buddha light, those ghosts seemed to be frightened and fled in panic. Tut! Lin Sun used the way of overcoming adversity. He grabbed with his big hand, and a pitch-black alms bowl rose into the air. As it rotated, the ghosts were sucked into the alms bowl uncontrollably. It was like a whale swallowing water. In just a moment, these ghosts were sucked up. Clatter as Lin Sun activated the Buddha power, the ghosts in the alms bowl were relieved and eliminated, leaving only wisps of pure congenital clear chi. There are fewer and fewer. Lin soon put away the alms bowl, knowing that it was time to move to a new place. Over the past year, he would come to the Broken Demon Cave every once in a while in order to collect congenital clear chi. But obviously, there were few remnant souls and resentment left in the Broken Demon Cave. Whoosh! Without delay, Lin soon floated away. Not long after leaving the Broken Demon Cave, Lin soon successively went to some dangerous areas that he had already figured out and harvested batch after batch of congenital clear chi. What? Just as Lin soon was about to return to the Buddha land, he suddenly noticed something and looked up into the distance. A snow-white bird, like a flowing rainbow, came from afar. Before it landed, it said respectfully, "Child Lin, my master, Miss Lin Shui, has something to tell you." It was a white-browed dragon sparrow, an extremely rare fierce bird with a trace of dragon blood flowing in its body. It was gifted. "What's the matter, Miss Lin Shui?" Lin Sun asked. "My master said that the seal of the ancient land of Wanxiang in the thunder-shaking territory will be completely removed in half a year. If Child Lin is interested in exploring there, please go to the thunder-shaking territory with this token. At that time, you just need to crush this token, and my master will come to pick you up." White-browed dragon sparrow spread its wings and handed a light cyan jade token to Lin Sun. Lin Sun put away the jade token and said, "Thanks a lot. Go back and tell your master that I will definitely be there." Whoosh! White-browed dragon sparrow spread its wings and disappeared like a flash of lightning. Half a year? That's enough. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun returned to the Buddha land. 3 months later. Boom! Along with a peerlessly blazing strand of sword chi descending, the sword saint's skeleton crashed to the ground, and it transformed into ash that dispersed into the surroundings. In the distance, Lin Sun's expression was calm, but his black eyes were steaming with a wisp of frightening divine light. The sword technique left behind by Battle Emperor Wu Yang had already been perfected by him by 50%. Once this sword chi came out, it could seize the power of creation and was enough to shake the world. On this day, Lin Sun ushered in the opportunity to advance. The 6th tribulation of longevity, karma disaster, came. On this day, the tribulation cloud was like a tide, covering the sky above the Buddha land. The power from heaven made the world full of oppressive atmosphere. Suddenly, the thunder tribulation came. The electric arc was like a long snake, dancing wildly between heaven and earth, turning the mountains made of white bones into powder. Karma was regarded as a hindrance and evil consequence that hindered the path of cultivation. All the strong who set foot on the path of cultivation had their own karma. For example, hatred, disgust, addiction, some things that had been experienced would turn into a kind of karma, like invisible shackles, hidden in the consciousness. The 6th tribulation of longevity was aimed at the karma of practitioners. The so-called karma was like a thief in the heart. If it was not killed, it would be difficult to calm the mind and Tao. After 7 days and 7 nights, Lin Sun finally survived the tribulation and killed the thief in his heart after going through great terror and danger. There was no need to elaborate on the process. It was worth mentioning that after this karma disaster, Lin Sun realized that he had accumulated a lot of karma in his heart during the years of cultivation. It was like an invisible thief in his heart that he had never noticed. For example, the hatred for Yun Qi Bai, the guilt for Zhao Jingxian, the worry for Ah Lu. All kinds of things could be regarded as a thief in his heart. Now Lin Sun had killed the thief in his heart, passed the tribulation, calmed his mind, and fixed his cultivation. This was not a kind of abandonment and forgetting, but cutting off the karma and getting rid of the thief in his heart. In the future cultivation, it would no longer affect his Tao. After passing this tribulation, Lin Sun spent a few more days to completely stabilize his cultivation and become a real king of the 6th tribulation of longevity. Almost 2 years ago, he was only at the 4th tribulation of longevity realm in 2 years. He had broken through 2 longevity tribulations in a row, and his cultivation had undergone 2 transformations. Such a speed of advancement was not shocking, but it was definitely not slow. The rarest thing was that Lin Sun's every step was extremely solid. When it came to the solid foundation, no one among his peers could compare with him. I don't know what level I am in the upper 9 realms with my current combat power. Lin Sun's eyes were deep and he was lost in thought. P.S. Let's talk about something briefly. 1. The season changes. Goldfish caught a bad cold the day before yesterday. She has been coughing these 2 days. She is so sleepy that she wants to update more, but she can't. I hope you can forgive her. 2. The plot will speed up. In fact, these 2 chapters have sped up a lot. 3. The first day of October is National Day. I wish you a happy holiday, and ask for a guaranteed monthly ticket. Chapter 1302. Almost 2 years ago, after chasing Yun Qin by all the way, Lin Sun ushered in the 4th tribulation of longevity, the 7 emotions disaster, and his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. Then, in the past year or so, he successively broke through the 5th tribulation of longevity, the 6 desires disaster, and the 6th tribulation of longevity, the karma disaster. Compared to the speed of advancement in the past 2 years, Lin Sun's combat strength had transformed so fast that it seemed to have reached a peak state. This was the result of a good foundation. On one hand, it was related to the various opportunities and fortunes obtained in the upper 9 realms, and on the other hand, it was inextricably related to his own path. In the past, Lin Sun's accumulated cultivation and foundation were too strong and astonishing, causing his cultivation to break through extremely quickly. Clang! The broken blade swept out, becoming more and more illusory. The sharp aura tore open cracks in the nearby void, making a sizzling sound. Moreover, there were obscure Tao markings and diagrams that emanated a divine aura that was capable of stunning the ages. In the past 2 years, the broken blade had been nurtured in the furnace formed by the wonderful Tao fire and tempered by various divine materials. Its appearance had obviously evolved a lot. The broken blade was originally a divine weapon, but as Lin Sun nurtured and tempered it as his own supreme weapon, if Lin Sun could become a saint one day, the broken blade would definitely transform into a saint weapon that belonged to Lin Sun. The only trouble was that the broken blade wasn't complete. If it wanted to transform into a saint weapon, it would definitely not be easy. It was worth mentioning that in addition to the myriad miraculous Tao fire, there were 5 other Tao fires with their own wonders that Lin Sun had obtained in the underground tomb at that time. When he saw Old Toad 2 years ago, Lin Sun had already given the golden blaze Tao fire, which had turned into a golden lamp, to Old Toad. He gave the dustless Tao fire, which had turned into a white jade book, to the big black bird. As for the eternal silence Tao fire, which had turned into a black jade ruler, and the purple glory Tao fire, which had turned into a purple painting, Lin Sun planned to give them to Xia Ji and Zhao Jingxian respectively. The only remaining the 5 elements Tao fire was intended to be left to Alu. "Big brother, come here quickly!" Inside the pagoda, Old Toad shouted excitedly, "It's done, it's finally King done." Lin Sun was stunned. He put away the broken sword and stood up. When he reached the 18th floor of the Buddha Tower, he saw that the 18 stone diagrams on the walls had disappeared. However, there were golden Buddhist characters and runes circulating in the void, emitting boundless light. It was sacred and vast, and an auspicious rain of light sprinkled down. At that moment, Lin Sun even had a tingling feeling in his eyes. In a trance, he felt as if he was in a sacred Pure Land, and his body and mind were bathed in a layer of Zen. This Lin Sun was moved and a little absent-minded. This is the greatest opportunity hidden within the Buddha fan earth. On the side, Old Toad had its hands on its waist, beaming with joy. Look at this row of golden Buddhist markings. It's the true embodiment of the Grand Tao, and it's the derivation of the Tao. According to my inference, the first sacred Buddha of the ancient times was bound to be an extraordinary figure that possessed supreme wisdom, and it was sufficient to look down upon the world. The big black bird sighed with emotion on the side. For more than 2 years, it and Old Toad had spent all their efforts and time on deciphering the 18 stone diagrams. Now they finally solved the mystery and peeped into the mystery. Naturally, they were filled with emotion. But do you know what this line of writing means? The big black bird's voice suddenly became strange. Old Toad's laughter stopped abruptly. Its mouth twitched, and its expression became strange. Lin Sun asked in a daze, "What does it mean? Isn't it an inheritance?" Old Toad pointed to the row of bright and sacred golden Buddhist markings and read them softly. "When my Tao is proved, I know the sufferings of all living beings." It was a simple sentence, but it shocked Lin Sun. A Buddha who had attained the Tao thought that all living beings were suffering when he was proving the Tao. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel touched by the kindness and compassion contained in it, and a kind of admiration and respect arose spontaneously in his heart. Thinking of the mountains of bones in the Buddha land, which were formed from the corpses of the enemies of the 8 regions suppressed by the ancient sacred Buddha, Lin Sun's admiration in his heart grew deeper. They're all Buddhist cultivators, but some of the old fellows in the Ksitigarbha temple are worlds apart from this holy Buddha. The big black bird sneered, its words full of ridicule to the Ksitigarbha temple. Next, Old Toad began to instruct Lin Sun. This sacred Buddha left 10 supreme secret methods of inheritance, which are hidden in each handwriting of this line of Buddhist markings. Later, you just need to reflect these Buddhist markings with your mind, and you will feel the inheritance. Remember, you can only choose one of them. Before, Big Black was greedy and wanted to obtain all these inheritances. As a result, his soul suffered a backfire and he almost went mad. At this point, the big black bird couldn't help blushing with embarrassment. What I got is a kind of inheritance to temper the soul, called Buddha's view. Big Black got a kind of inheritance to temper the state of mind, called formless vacuum scripture. Old Toad said quickly, "It's a pity that no matter who gets the inheritance, they can only understand it, not pass it on." Only understanding it meant that neither Old Toad nor Big Blackbird could pass it on to others in private even if they got the inheritance. Lin Sun nodded, immediately took a deep breath, sat cross-legged on the ground, released his mind, and poured his perception into the line of golden Buddhist markings suspended in the void. In an instant, a grand sound of Sanskrit rang like morning bells and evening drums. Lin Sun felt his soul tremble, and saw an infinitely tall figure of Buddha sitting in the starry sky, surrounded by hundreds of millions of auspicious lights, emitting infinite light, just like the legendary master of all the heavens. In front of him, the stars were as insignificant as floating clouds and dust. But when Lin Sun wanted to look carefully, the Buddha disappeared without a trace, as if it didn't exist at all. After that, 10 golden scrolls of Buddhist scriptures floated into appearance and slowly unfurled, and row after row of brilliant and beautiful words appeared within them. Those words, like real dragons soaring and immortal phoenixes flapping their wings, were full of Zen and Taoism, mysterious and ethereal. There was no need to figure it out at all. When Lin Sun's perception swept over, suddenly all kinds of enlightenment emerged in his mind. Prajna Wonderful Sutra, cultivate the Prajna heart, refine the wonderful chi, hide the universe inside, and lead directly to the way of oneself. Lin Sun was shocked. Since it could be called a scripture, it must be written by a sage himself. It could be foreseen that this Prajna Wonderful Sutra must be extraordinary. Observing the infinite scripture, cultivating the infinite glass body, refining the secret of the phenomena of heaven and earth, holding the meaning of subduing dragons and tigers, and performing the act of the angry bodhisattva. This was an extremely wondrous and terrifying body-tempering technique. Lin Sun was a little impulsive at this moment to obtain this inheritance. He had always been at the top of chi refining and soul refining, and had never really dabbled in body refining. It was not that he was not tempted, but that he once obtained the 9-purity holy body technique in the secret realm of Demon Saint in the Ultimate, which was a real body refining method of the sage path, extremely profound. Because of this, Lin Sun had always looked down on those ordinary body refining method. But now, this observing the infinite scripture was obviously an extremely incredible body refining method. How could Lin Sun ignore it? But after thinking for a while, Lin Sun still held back. He already had the 9-purity holy body technique, and another body refining method was completely tantamount to a waste. What's more, he was not a pure body refining practitioner like Alu, so he didn't have much hope of becoming a sage by body refining. Nirvana Lotus Seal, Akala Sutra of True Self, Buddha's View, Kasyapa, Throws the Elephant Next. Lin Sun read through them one by one. Although he couldn't see the true meaning, he could understand the different magical effects of these inheritances. It could be said that in Lin Sun's view, these 10 inheritances were all top-notch secret scriptures in the world. If they were scattered in the outside world, it was enough to cause sages to fight for them. Even if one could comprehend one of them, he could completely establish a sect. But for Lin Sun, these 10 inheritances were full of unimaginable temptation, which made him very excited, but they were not what he urgently needed. Perhaps casually choosing any one of them would allow him to obtain a supreme inheritance, and it was no less than obtaining a great fortune. But Lin Sun couldn't have such an idea. Even after completely calming down, he realized that this great opportunity in front of him might be enough to make other practitioners crazy, but unfortunately, it was not what he needed. Thinking of this, when Lin Sun looked at the 10 Buddhist scriptures again, his mind was completely different. There was no desire before, and his eyes were empty. Cultivation needed to know how to make choices. And Lin Sun's principle was very simple. As long as it was beneficial to his own cultivation, he could use it. As long as it was dispensable, he would rather not have it, because it would form a kind of fetter. The more he occupied, the more fetter he would have. This was also called external obstacles in cultivation. If he sought external things, he would use them, and they would be his things. If he was burdened by him, his cultivation would be trapped by external things. In the end, Lin Sun sighed softly and decided to give up. It was not that he was very open-minded, but that he knew clearly that even if he got this kind of opportunity, he could only understand it, but couldn't express it in words. Naturally, he couldn't give it to others, and it might hinder his own cultivation. It was better to give it up if it was of little value. At this moment, after making this decision, Lin Sun's state of mind was imperceptibly tempered and sublimated. Opportunities were extremely tempting and coveted by everyone. The more amazing the opportunity was, the more irresistible it was. Since ancient times, how many people were able to resolutely refuse and maintain a calm state of mind at such a time? If others knew it, they would laugh at Lin Sun for being a fool. But Lin Sun didn't regret it at all. His cultivation path was different from the past and the present. If he wanted to walk on an unprecedented path, he should stick to his own spirit and state of mind. However, just when Lin Sun gave up, a peaceful and solemn voice suddenly sounded in his mind. "Goodness, you can be regarded as one of us." Every word was like the sound of Tao, deafening and resounding through his body and mind. Lin Sun was shocked. When he looked up again, he saw that the 10 golden Buddhist scriptures had undergone incredible changes at this time. P.S. Illness comes like a landslide, and illness goes away like spinning silk. There is only one more night watch tonight. I owe you for now, and I will make it up when the goldfish is cured. Chapter 1303. 10 Buddhist scriptures representing different unparalleled heritages turned into a golden Buddha niche under Lin Sun's astonished gaze like melted golden copper liquid. The Buddha niche looked the same as the 3,000 pagoda, but it was only 1 foot high. It was golden all over as if it was made of divine gold, sprinkling auspicious light rain. A heart was enshrined in the Buddha niche. The heart was clear and bright, like a ball of light, blazing and dazzling. Dong dong dong. When Lin Sun's eyes fell on the heart, he felt that it seemed to be revived. A strong thunder-like rhythm was transmitted, bursting out a kind of horrible pressure. In a trance, Lin Sun seemed to see the figure of the infinitely tall Buddha again, which filled the entire universe. But this time, Lin Sun clearly sensed that the Buddha's shadow seemed to nod to him slightly and said, "My name is Xingjia. Nice to meet you." Lin Sun was shocked. When he looked at it again, the Buddha's shadow had already disappeared. This reminded Lin Sun of Battle Emperor Wu Yang. She also used to call him like this. She thought that Lin Sun and she were on the same path, so they should call each other Taoist friend regardless of seniority. It was also at that time that Lin Sun realized how important the word Taoist friend was in the eyes of some powerful figures. In the pursuit of Tao, those who were on the same path would be regarded as friends. Obviously, the holy Buddha Xingjia in the ancient times also regarded Lin Sun as a Taoist friend, just like Battle Emperor Wu Yang. Therefore, they called each other Taoist friend. The 1-foot-high Buddha niche had restrained all its charm and aura at this moment, becoming simple and unobtrusive. Inside the Buddhist shrine, the sparkling and translucent heart was sealed by a dense layer of Buddhist runes. It was dim and lifeless. "Leave my killing Buddha heart and break the way of life and death with you." A grand Sanskrit voice resounded in Lin Sun's heart. Then, the Buddha niche descended and was held by Lin Sun with both hands. At this moment, he understood the value of this Buddha niche. When in a life-or-death situation, he could unseal the Buddha niche and use the power of the killing Buddha heart to break the way of life and death. Within the Buddha's pagoda, the row of golden Buddhist runes had vanished, and even the 18 Tao diagrams inscribed on the stone walls had vanished as well. However, when they learned that Lin Sun had turned down such an inheritance, both the old toad and the big black bird opened their eyes wide, as if they were looking at an idiot. "Are you really stupid?" Big Blackie and I spared no effort and spent more than a year to break through this heaven-defying creation. "You actually don't want it?" Old Toad looked flustered and exasperated at his failure to live up to its expectations. "Foolish, truly foolish." The big black bird also sighed. "What do you know?" Lin Sun answered calmly. He was sure that if he took out that Buddha niche, these two guys would definitely go crazy with jealousy. "Why do I feel that he has obtained some kind of great benefit?" Old Toad was suspicious. After knowing Lin Sun for so long, it didn't believe that Lin Sun would spit out the meat he had eaten. "I have serious doubts as well." The big black bird glanced up and down at Lin stealthily. "Cut the crap. We should leave now." Lin Sun hurriedly changed the subject. "It's indeed time to go. Damn it, just because of this opportunity I've spent more than a year's time and energy. I don't know what the upper 9 realms is like now." Old Toad couldn't sit still at once. After careful calculation, they had all spent almost 2 years in the Buddha's pagoda. In the outside world, 2 years might not be a big deal. But in the upper 9 realms, too many things could happen in 2 years. There were countless fortuitous encounters here, and it was a place where experts fought for supremacy. Every once in a while, there would be countless dazzling figures rising up like comet. It could be foreseen that the upper 9 realms today was destined to be completely different from 2 years ago. "Not waiting for Yunqi Bai?" the big black bird suddenly asked. It knew that the reason why Lin Sun was waiting here was not only to hone his cultivation and improve his combat strength, but more importantly, he had been waiting for Yunqi Bai to appear again. "Not anymore." Lin Sun shook his head. Waiting meant being passive. Compared with killing Yunqi Bai, he was more concerned about the whereabouts of Alu. Now, there were less than 2 months left before the appointment with Lin Shui, the holy girl. If there was no accident, the seal of the ancient land of Wanxiang in the thunder-shocking realm would have been completely removed. The most urgent thing now was to find the whereabouts of Alu. On the same day, Lin Sun and his companions left the Buddha land for the Thundershocking realm. Half a month later, Lin Sun and his companions appeared in the Thundershocking realm. Different from the distant Fire realm and the Gen Mountain realm, the Thundershocking realm was full of violent chi of thunder. The rocks, plants, and even rivers and lakes were suffused with the aura of lightning, and even the sky would rumble with lightning every night. The lightning was like a dancing silver snake that tore the night sky apart, and it was dazzling and resplendent. It seemed that no one dared to set foot in such a place without the cultivation of the King realm or above. The ranking has changed again. The strong man named Xiaohao has occupied the first place again. A group of cultivators gathered in front of the Thundershocking battle tablet. They were discussing animatedly, and everyone's face was filled with emotion. In the upper 9 realms, every single realm had a strange battle tablet. Only by passing the test of the battle tablet would one be able to determine if one had the qualifications to be ranked on the Heavens Prodigy Gold rankings, and one's ranking on the Heavens Prodigy Gold rankings. The test could be conducted on all 9 battle tablet. Xiaohao? It's said that he's an extraordinary ancient freak who keeps an extremely low profile. He accepted the test of the battle tablet a year ago, and he reached the top on the first try and pushed Yun Qingbai down. At that time, the entire upper 9 realms was shocked. This man is really terrifying. He's been hiding for so many years. Who could have imagined that he would shock the heavens with a single move? Actually, did all of you notice that the girl called Raw Wu, who's in second place, is extremely terrifying as well? In this past year, she and Xiao Hao have always been fighting for the position of first place, and they both have victories and defeat. It's truly breathtaking. Fairy Ruo Wu, that's a legendary existence. It's a pity that Yun Qingbai's ranking has been pushed to the 3rd place for more than a year, but he's been indifferent. Could it be that he's in closed-door cultivation? Not only Yun Qingbai, but even Demon Lin has disappeared for a long time. Nowadays, the most dazzling people in the upper 9 realms are Xiaohao, Ruo Wu, Yuan Fatian, Bai Longting, and other ancient freaks. Alas, it's another ancient freak. Apart from Yun Qingbai, the rest of the top 10 on the outstanding children's gold list are all ancient freaks. Could it be that our current generation's geniuses are inferior to these freaks who have been silent since ancient times? It's a pity that Demon Lin has never entered the heavenly golden ranking. Otherwise, with his combat strength, he should be able to enter the top 10, right? Haha, it might be possible 2 years ago, but now, don't you see that most of the names in the top 30 of the heavenly golden ranking are ruthless people who have only risen in the past 2 years? It's impossible for Demon Lin to enter the top 10. As the experts discussed, they didn't notice that not far away, Lin Sun, who they were talking about, had already stood in the field without a trace. Look, you haven't appeared for 2 years, and everyone in this world looks down on you. The old toad winked and teased. Lin Sun smiled and said thoughtfully, "You may not believe it, but Xiaohao, who is now ranked first on the heavenly golden ranking, has been seen when I entered the ancient desolation realm." Speaking of this, he couldn't help but think of the scenes in the Starfall Peak in the Westing realm. At that time, Xiaohao, the young master of the Nether Star Imperial clan, was dormant in a star egg, surrounded by a Saint Tao forbidden formation, which was extremely amazing. He'd once had a conversation with Xiaohao. Even though it was a short conversation, it gave him a strong feeling that Xiaohao was an extraordinary person with great spirit, ambition, and breadth of mind. When he appeared one day, this person was destined to be famous. Now, Lin Sun's judgment was confirmed. Xiaohao was ranked first on the heavenly golden ranking, and his name shook the upper 9 realms. Lin Sun couldn't help but be moved by this. When they learned about Xiaohao's origin from Lin Sun, the eyes of the old toad and the big blackbird focused. The Nether Star Imperial clan, this is the first giant clan in the ancient times. It controls more than 1,000 clan forces in the ancient times, and it deserves to be one of the imperial clans. This was the reaction of the old toad, and its tone was filled with surprise and complexity. Any clan that can be called an imperial clan naturally can't be a simple clan. At least it proves that a real emperor has been born in this clan. Unfortunately, according to my knowledge, the Nether Star Imperial clan suddenly suffered a great calamity during the ancient times, and it was practically annihilated in a short period of a year. It was severed in the passage of time, and the records related to it no longer exist now. This was the reaction of the big black bird, and it seemed that it didn't have a good impression of the so-called Imperial clan. Then, whether it was the big black bird or the old toad, their expressions became solemn, and they warned Lin Sun that if Xiao Hao was really a direct descendant of the Nether Star Imperial clan and was also a young master, then he was definitely an extremely terrifying existence, and they must be careful. At first, I had a good impression of this person. In my opinion, it would be best if we could be friends, said Lin Sun. Lin Sun said. Speaking of which, Little Silver, the God-Eater King, was also a guardian insect of the Nether Star Imperial clan. By the way, have you heard of the Jiang clan of the Imperial clan? Lin Sun suddenly asked. He remembered that senior brother Xian Kong had given him a light green bamboo leaf-shaped jade pendant, and asked him to return it to the Jiang clan of the Imperial clan when he had the chance to meet them in the future, and tell them that it belonged to Jiang Xingqiu. No. The big black bird and the old toad shook their heads in unison, indicating that although they were born in the ancient times, they didn't know much. Especially the matter about the Imperial clan. It was something that happened at the beginning of the ancient times, and when they were born, an unknown number of years had passed since the beginning of the ancient times. This caused Lin Sun to be shocked, and he instantly realized that if Xiao Hao was really the young master of the Nether Star Imperial clan, then didn't it mean that he had been born at the beginning of the ancient times? Chapter 1304. In my opinion, Ruo Wu is not simple either. Old Toad suddenly said. In the discussion just now, someone said that this woman had a mysterious ice coffin with a star map, which attracted Old Toad's attention. In ancient times, the pure-blood vermilion bird was a terrifying race that was comparable to the true dragon, fairy phoenix, white tiger and black tortoise. If this woman really has such a background, it's really amazing. Big Black Bird commented. Lin Sun remembered that when he crossed the Boundary River for the first time, he once saw a giant silver-white bear and a dragon turtle in order to seize a piece of soul source. At that time, the dragon turtle carried an ice coffin, which was 3 meters long. The coffin was surrounded by wisps of holy starlight, engraved with patterns of flowers, birds, insects, fish, sun, moon, mountains and rivers, ancestors' sacrifice, and so on. It exuded a mysterious and boundless atmosphere. The most frightening thing was that a star map appeared on the ice coffin lid, which seemed to include a vast universe of stars, which was huge and boundless. However, the funny thing was that no matter if it was the giant bear or the dragon turtle with the ice coffin on its back, as soon as they saw him, they were shivering in fear and running away in panic. They even shouted, "Old Madman" and "Old Madman's Aura." At this time, when Lin Sun learned that Fairy Ruo Wu, who was now ranked second on the Tianzhao Golden List, had a mysterious ice coffin, he couldn't help but wonder if she was a pure-blood descendant of Vermilion Bird. Could she be the target that the giant silver-white bear and the dragon turtle were guarding? In my opinion, Yuan Fatian can't be underestimated. It is said that he is a descendant of Yu Mu, which has an extremely terrifying origin. It is said that he has infinite strength and can control ghosts and gods. Exactly. This person is the most overbearing and fearless in his actions. His body refinement cultivation has already attained the 6th tribulation of longevity, and he's able to transform into a 30 kilometers tall golden body with a single shake of his body. He can move mountains and split seas, and his ferocious might is monstrous. I have heard that what Yuan Fatian practices is an extremely powerful body refining inheritance called 9 Pure Saintly Body Technique. Its origin is extremely mysterious. In the distance, someone was talking, which attracted Lin Sun's attention again. 9 Pure Saintly Body Techniques. This name reminded Lin Sun that this Yuan Fatian must be the young child who had been dormant in the 5 elements holy island in the ultimate ruins. A green-robed old ape that had attained the saint realm was standing guard by his side. So it turns out that this person has already arrived at the upper 9 realms and is now ranked in the top 10 of the genius gold roll. Lin raised his eyebrows. He suddenly recalled that the 9 pure sacred body scripture was a scripture of the divine path. The scripture recorded in it was also related to the saint plane. However, Yuan Fatian was able to cultivate this technique before he had even stepped into the saint realm. Obviously, there was a great mystery behind this. If there's a chance, I want to spar with him and see if I can see through some of his mysteries, Lin Sun thought to himself. The outside world has changed a lot in the past 2 years. The old toad sighed. There are no heroes in this era, and a bunch of rascals actually became famous. How sad. Fortunately, this king has reappeared in this world. In the future, this king's name will be sung everywhere in the upper 9 realms. Hee. The big black bird was disdainful, and almost spat at Old Toad. This fellow was too narcissistic, and even it found it a bit displeasing to the eye. Old Toad ignored the disdain of the big black bird and looked at Lin Sun. By the way, do you want to have a test? Lin Sun was stunned and immediately shook his head. Forget it. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but if he was too famous now, it would attract trouble. He didn't want to be the center of attention no matter where he went. People like Xiaohao, Ruowu, Yuan Fatian and the others were so dazzling now that the whole upper 9 realms was paying attention to them. It was conceivable that they would definitely be watched by countless eyes. This was fame. There were pros and cons, and it depended on the person to choose. For Lin Sun, there was no lack of such opportunities to become famous. Of course, when it was necessary, he didn't mind displaying his strength to intimidate some rascals. Why don't you go? Lin Sun was curious. The old toad loved to be in the limelight. In my eyes, only the first place is worthy of me. Unfortunately, I don't want to take this title yet. The old toad said calmly. Nonsense, I think it's not that you don't want to, but that you don't dare. You're worried that, if you don't even enter the top 100 after the test, that would be a disgrace. The big black bird mocked. Damn bird, do you want to die? The old toad flew into a rage and lifted his foot to kick the big black bird. Ha ha. The big black bird spread his wings and flew away, laughing unscrupulously. Just the mocking attitude of the big black bird made the old toad so angry that he almost went crazy. In terms of the ability to attract hatred, the big black bird was definitely comparable to Alu. It was not only wretched but also despicable. Hey, why do I feel that the big black bird looks familiar? Someone exclaimed. Lin Sun immediately realized that his identity might be exposed. He immediately said goodbye to the big black bird and the old toad and left in a hurry. That person must be Demon God Lin. Not long after they left, someone shouted, "It's been almost 2 years and he's showing up again." Demon God Lin? He actually left the Buddhist land. Is he here for the fortune in the Vientiane ancient land? Someone was curious. If that's the case, then he's one step too late. Who doesn't know that in the Vientiane ancient land, the area around the tomb of emperors that has been sealed for thousands of years has long been controlled by many strong cultivators. Ordinary people can't get close. That's right. I heard that the underworld child and the white dragon court are now near the tomb of emperors. The crowd discussed. The Vientiane ancient land finally revealed its true face not long ago. No one expected that it would be a tomb of emperors. Recently, this had caused a huge commotion and attracted many strong cultivators. But this was also the most terrifying part. Recently, near the tomb of emperors, there had been endless killing every day. Blood flowed like a river. No one knew how many strong cultivators were buried. Even some of the famous people were killed and died with hatred. Therefore, those who knew the inside story thought that they were not strong enough and did not dare to get close at all. They were afraid that they would be involved in the bloody and terrifying battle. 2 years ago, demon god Lin killed a group of descendants of the Heavenly Master Sword sect. How arrogant and powerful he was. I wonder what kind of storm his appearance will cause this time? Some people were looking forward to it. Don't overestimate him. There are countless strong cultivators near the tomb of emperors. It's like a big pit. Whoever goes there will suffer. Some people sneered. The Vientiane ancient land was located in a dangerous thunder swamp in the thunder-shocking territory. It was easy to find. Along the way, Lin soon asked around and learned about the Vientiane ancient land. What he didn't expect was that the seal of the Vientiane ancient land had been completely lifted not long ago. Now, countless strong cultivators had rushed there and surrounded the tomb of emperors unearthed in the Vientiane ancient land. Tomb of emperors? This is impossible. Those who can step into the emperor realm are all terrifying figures above the Saint King. How could they die here? When they heard the news, the old toad and the big black bird were a little surprised. The emperor realm was the supreme of the first realm. It was far more powerful than the sage realm. If one was the Lord of Saints, this title alone was enough to deter for a period of time and overlook the heavens. Such figures were already immortal and could live as long as the ancient times. Unless they encountered an unpredictable catastrophe, it was difficult for time to erase them. And a tomb of emperors, that was even more incredible. No matter whether this tomb of emperors is real or not, I'm only worried about whether a Lu is there. Lin Sun frowned. The situation was not optimistic. The seal of the Vientiane ancient land was lifted in advance, and the so-called tomb of emperors unearthed in the Vientiane ancient land was controlled by many strong cultivators. Once they went there, it was bound to cause a lot of trouble. 2 days later, a wave of terrifying thunderous sounds reverberated between the heavens and the earth like a tide, rising and falling one after another, rumbling endlessly. In the distance, the thunder surged like a torrent, surging between the heaven and earth. The dazzling thunder and lightning danced wildly, exuding an aura that was enough to destroy the world. There was not a single blade of grass growing there. The earth was stained with the aura of thunder, and the void was surging with wisps of thunder and lightning arcs, which made people's scalp tingle. What was more horrifying was that the deeper they went, the more terrifying the power of thunder and lightning became, flashing and surging in different forms. It was like coming to the kingdom of thunder. Even with Lin Sun's temperament, he couldn't help but gasp when he saw this scene. This place was definitely a place of great danger, and the Vientiane ancient land was located in the deepest part of the Thunder Lock Impasse. However, when they were really close, Lin soon found that there was a path like a white rainbow leading to the depths of the Thunderlock Impasse. Like an arch bridge, it isolated the thunder and lightning all over the sky. They all breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, without these paths, they wouldn't dare to take a step into it no matter how bold they were. Thunder and lightning were mainly used for killing. But here, the thunder and lightning were like a storm, filling the space. The aura it emitted was enough to kill ghosts and gods. It was no different from a peerless catastrophe. In the past, there definitely wasn't such a path. It should be because the seal of the Vientiane ancient land was completely lifted that a glimmer of hope was born, giving cultivators a chance to enter it. The big black bird pondered. Of course. Old Toad nodded. Let's go first. After arriving at the Vientiane ancient land, I will contact Saintess Cold Snow and see if I can get some information from her. Lin soon made a decision. Immediately, he led Old Toad and the big black bird into the path like a white rainbow. Crackle! Rumble! In the sky, thunder and lightning poured down like an avalanche, rolling and surging as if to destroy the world, making people desperate. But as soon as they got close to the path like a white rainbow, they were offset by an invisible restriction. Although Lin Sun and the others felt a little relieved, they didn't dare to be careless and were all vigilant. As far as the eye could see, the thunder and lightning were boundless, covering a large area of land. No one knew how these thunder and lightning were born. Moreover, the deeper they went, the more dense the power of thunder and lightning was. Even Lin Sun and the others were surprised to see that there were shadows like thunder spirits wandering in the surging thunder and lightning between heaven and earth. Chapter 1305. That's a thunder spirit born from the destructive aura of Thunder Tao. Old Toad gasped, its golden eyes shining. This is one of the main materials for refining holy treasures. It's enough to upgrade a treasure to a higher level. Don't even think about it. Only sages can subdue that thunder spirit. If you want to die, don't drag us down with you. The big blackbird warned. Lin Sun was also shocked. Thunder spirit was a spirit born from the aura of Thunder Tao. It was extremely rare, but also extremely terrifying. No one under the Saint Realm was its opponent. Looking carefully, the phantoms of thunder spirits were like gods patrolling the world of thunder, with a terrifying aura. Fortunately, as long as they walked on this rainbow-like path, they didn't have to worry about being targeted by the thunder spirit. Be careful, there's only one way to the ancient land of Wanxiang. If someone hides ahead and ambushes you, the consequences will be unpredictable, Lin Sun warned. As soon as he said this, Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and suddenly pressed out a finger. Buzz! A pure and extremely condensed finger force swept out and disappeared in an instant. Thousands of meters away, in a corner on one side, it seemed to be empty, but in fact, a young man in black bathed in an obscure aura was lurking there. In his perception, he had already sensed that someone was gradually approaching, and a cruel killing intent appeared on his lips. In the past few days, he'd ambushed and killed many experts here, and made a huge fortune. The young man in black frowned, a sense of uneasiness suddenly surging in his heart. But before he could react, a peerlessly swift and fierce finger force suddenly appeared out of thin air and shot towards him. Puff! A string of scarlet blood splashed. The young man in black's eyes widened as if he couldn't believe it, and then he fell to the ground. And there was a bloody hole between his eyebrows. Not long after, Lin Sun and the others appeared here. Old Toad nimbly searched the young man in black, and then picked up a heavy storage bag with a smile. This kid obviously robbed and killed a lot of strong people. He's quite rich, Old Toad commented with a smile. What Taoism did you use just now? The large blackbird was shocked as it looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun had killed a peak fourth tribulation longevity realm figure from tens of thousands of feet away. He didn't even manage to react in time. This was too terrifying. You wouldn't understand even if I told you, Lin Sun said casually. This finger was called Boundless World. This was the third move of the Void Destruction Divination finger. As its name implied, once this finger was executed, then no matter where the enemy was concealed or how far away they were, it was capable of killing them from a distance. This involved the usage of the profound meaning of space. Of course, Lin Sun hadn't become a saint yet, so it was impossible for him to master the power of space. He could only use the power of boundless with limited power. But even so, such might wasn't something that just anyone could withstand. The reason the large blackbird was shocked was because it noticed that the might of this finger contained the profundities of space. The three of them continued forward. Along the way, they would occasionally encounter some hidden experts along the way. All of these experts were skilled in concealment, and some were even able to change their figures and transform into dust, sand, light, and shadow, causing others to be unable to guard against them. Unfortunately, under the perception of Lin Sun's terrifying spiritual awareness, they had nowhere to hide and were killed one by one. Along the way, Lin Sun and the others made a windfall. There were more than 100 kinds of king medicines that they had plundered from these experts. In addition, there were also some other valuable spiritual materials and divine materials. Before long, Lin Sun felt that the scene in front of him had changed, and he had come to an area with undulating mountains. One after another, towering mountains stood tall and ancient. Each of the mountains had a different aura. Some were completely crimson red and blazed with surging divine lights, and they were like enormous furnaces that lay across the heavens and the earth. Some seemed to be made of divine gold, emitting a dazzling golden light. Even the rocks and plants were as sharp as swords, and the chilling atmosphere was overwhelming. Some seemed to be made of ice and snow, and the biting cold froze the void with a layer of ice. Some, as far as the eye could see, each mountain had a different atmosphere. It implied the rotation of the 4 seasons, the alternation of the 5 elements, and the alternation of yin and yang. It was magnificent and magnificent to the extreme. This was the ancient land of Wanxiang. Motherfucker! Creation is divine and natural. Such extraordinary ability to change the heavens and the earth is probably something even a saint would find difficult to accomplish, right? The old toad exclaimed. If I cultivate here, I can appreciate different great ways, which will be of great help to my cultivation. The big black bird's eyes were bright, and it was amazed. Lin Sun took out a jade token from his arms and crushed it with his palm. At the same time, a stream of light swept out and disappeared into the sky. This token was given to him by Saintess Lin Shui. In merely a short moment, a beautiful figure flashed over from the distant sky. Her entire body was bathed in a pure and holy mist of ice and snow. She had fair skin, jet black hair that fluttered in the wind, and a drop-dead gorgeous appearance. It was Saintess Lin Shui. However, as soon as she saw Lin Sun, Lin Shui couldn't help but smile bitterly. Brother Lin, the situation has changed. Now the tomb is surrounded by many masters. I'm afraid it will be very difficult to seize the fortune. Lin Sun had been mentally prepared and nodded. I'm just looking for someone. Is there really an emperor's tomb here? The old toad couldn't help but ask. All along the way, it was very difficult for him to believe that such a thing would happen. Lin Shui nodded. It should be true. Unfortunately, the fortune within the tomb has been taken by someone a long time ago. It's been taken by someone? Lin Sun and the others were slightly surprised. Yes, but that person is currently trapped before the tomb and is unable to escape. According to Lin Shui, the seal on the ancient land of Wanxiang had been completely removed not long ago, and then the mysterious tomb had appeared as well, causing a stir in the Upper Nine territories. In those days, countless experts had come after hearing the news, and for the sake of the opportunity to enter the tomb, they didn't hesitate to fight. For a time, blood flowed incessantly in the vicinity of the tomb every single day, and countless experts were killed or injured. Because they knew that the appearance of the tomb was definitely accompanied by great fortuitous encounters. But to everyone's astonishment, no matter who it was, no matter what method they used, it was impossible to approach the tomb. The most unexpected thing was that just now, when everyone was thinking about how to enter the emperor's tomb, a man had walked out from the tomb. No one knew when he had entered the emperor's tomb, but everyone realized that the heaven-defying fortune sealed within the emperor's tomb was most likely obtained by this man. What does that person look like? Lin Sun couldn't help but ask when he heard this. Lin Shui pondered. An extremely handsome man. His entire body emitted a domineering and rough aura, and his cultivation is roughly at the 5th retribution of the longevity realm. He is an extremely powerful body refiner, and this person is quite impressive. Even when surrounded by experts, he showed no fear, and instead killed many opponents. However, he is also heavily injured, and I'm afraid it won't be long before he is killed. At this moment, Lin Shui suddenly realized that there was something wrong with the expressions of Lin Sun and the old toad. Where is that person? Lin Sun asked. His expression was still calm, but his voice carried a trace of anxiety. Could it be? Lin Shui's clear eyes focused, as if she had guessed something, and immediately said, "Follow me." As she spoke, her figure flashed, and she led the way. Lin Sun and the others followed closely. Could it be Alu? Lin Sun and the old toad's hearts tightened. In front of the tomb, they were surrounded by an unknown number of experts. If that person was really Alu, how could he be a match for him alone? Not long after, an earth-shattering thunder suddenly sounded in the distance, causing Lin Sun and the others' hearts to tremble, and they felt a piercingly cold heavenly might. Rumble! In the distant horizon, bolts of tribulation lightning fell from the sky, dazzling, smashing the void into pieces. It was a scene like the end of the world. This was the sixth retribution of the longevity realm, karma disaster. Lin Sun had just gone through this tribulation not long ago, so he naturally recognized it at a glance. What surprised him was why someone would choose such a dangerous place to go through the tribulation. Wasn't he afraid of being disturbed during the tribulation? Damn it, it's Alu! Suddenly, the old toad shouted excitedly. His golden eyes were like lightning, and he could see from afar that there was a figure struggling under the tribulation. It was Alu. This idiot, why did he choose to go through the tribulation at this time? Could it be that he was cornered and had to fight for a chance of survival by going through the tribulation? The old toad's expression changed. Let's go. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and his black eyes were cold. That person is actually their friend. This is going to be a big problem. Saintess Lin Shui was shocked. She knew very well that the man named Alu had long been targeted by many experts, waiting to seize the good fortune he had obtained. If Lin Sun and the others rushed over at this time, not only would they not be able to save Alu, but they would also be besieged by everyone, which was no different from courting death. Please calm down, everyone. The situation there is extremely complicated and dangerous, Saintess Lin Shui reminded them by voice transmission. I understand, but there are some things that we have to do even if we know it's impossible. Lin Sun's words were resolute and unquestionable. Girl, you'd better stay away from us, lest you be mistaken as one of us. In that case, we will feel sorry for you. The old toad grinned, but the smile seemed a little crazy. You two fools, why are you in such a hurry to die when you haven't even figured out the situation? Hey, wait for me! The big black bird shouted, but found that Lin Sun and the old toad ignored him and rushed forward with all their strength. He felt helpless and muttered, "They're all ***king crazy." As soon as his voice fell, he also rushed forward with a flash. Saintess Lin Shui stared blankly at them rushing over together, as if for them, even if it was a mountain of knives, a sea of fire, or a hell, they wouldn't even frown. This moved her, and her heart was inexplicably touched. On the road of cultivation, it would be a blessing to have such friends who could go through thick and thin together. Taking a deep breath, Saintess Lin Shui also followed them. Chapter 1306. Boom! The dazzling tribulation lightning poured down from the sky like a waterfall, illuminating the mountains and rivers. It was gorgeous and terrifying. Alu was bathed in blood as he struggled. In the distance, it was unknown how many experts had gathered, surrounding the area so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Although no one approached, no one retreated either. Everyone's face was filled with anticipation, excitement, cruelty, and desire. Because they all knew that this barbarian hid the fortune from the tomb of the Emperor. The tomb of the Emperor. Just 2 words were enough to make a saint go crazy. This barbarian was seriously injured before, and now he's trying to use the tribulation to survive. It's ridiculous. In my opinion, he's destined to die. On the peak of a mountain in the distance, a white-robed man held a feather fan in his hand. He was elegant. He smiled, but his words were bone-chilling. Nearby, many gazes were filled with fear when they saw the white-robed man. By Longting, An ancient freak of the White Flood dragon bloodline had risen strongly in the past 2 years. He had entered the 6th retribution of the longevity realm and was ranked in the top 10 of the Tianjiao Golden List. Get ready. When this person fails the tribulation, we'll capture him immediately. On the other side, a young man's figure was blurry. He was dressed in armor and was surrounded by stars, but no one could get within 10 feet of him. This was because his body exuded a strong and monstrous evil spirit. This was the power forged by the blood and corpses of his enemies. Just his gaze alone was enough to make one's hair stand on end and feel incomparably oppressive. Ming Child. 2 years ago, he was killed by Lin Sun and escaped with only a remnant of his soul. But now, he had obviously recovered, and his combat power was even more terrifying than before. At the same time, in the nearby area, there were many ruthless people like Bai Longting and Ming Child. All of them had cold eyes and regarded Ah Lu, who was crossing the tribulation in the distance, as their prey. This scene made people's hearts tremble. Even if these famous ruthless people were excluded, there were at least thousands of strong people in the field. Under such circumstances, no one doubted that the barbarian would be able to survive. In other words, what awaited him was death. An innocent man will get into trouble because of his wealth. This barbarian's background is not simple. It's just a pity. A crimson-haired girl with a delicate face and incomparably pure voice spoke softly. Her body was bathed in a holy fiery glow, and her snow-white bare feet were bound by a gray chain. "Does Miss Chi Yao recognize this person?" a green-robed man next to him asked. He had sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a heroic bearing. Strands of lightning appeared in his eyes, and they were extremely dazzling. "I've met him once. I only know that he is friends with that fiend Celestial Lin." Chi Yao chuckled, her pure face revealing a touch of seductive charm, causing the green-robed man to be unable to help but stare blankly. However, when he heard the 3 words, Demon God Lin, the green-robed man couldn't help but be shocked and said, "Lin Sun's friend." Chi Yao blinked and said, "Why? Fellow Taoist Gu, are you afraid of fiend God Lin?" The green-robed man sneered and said proudly, 2 years ago, this person might be considered an influential figure, but in the current upper 9 realms, I'm afraid he can't even enter the top 30 of the Heaven's Golden ranking. Why should I be afraid of him?" Chi Yao smiled but didn't comment. The green-robed man's name was Gu Tianyi, and he was also an ancient freak with extraordinary talent. He was ranked 26th on the Heaven's Golden ranking not long ago, and he was extremely insolent and arrogant. According to what Chi Yao knew, Gu Tianyi had a close relationship with Xiaohao, who was ranked first on the Heaven's Golden ranking. If not, she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to such an arrogant person. Seeing that Chi Yao was no longer paying attention to him, Gu Tianyi seemed to be a little embarrassed and said, "Miss Chi Yao, do you believe that even if Demon God Lin comes, he will undoubtedly die this time?" Chi Yao nodded, "I do. In such a situation, whoever comes to save that barbarian will die. No one can change that." The meaning of her words was very simple. Even if Lin Sun died, it had nothing to do with Gu Tianyi, but was forced by the general situation. Gu Tianyi couldn't help but frown and he said, "Could it be that Miss Chi Yao thinks that I'm not a match for Lin Sun?" Chi Yao smiled. "That's hard to say." A wisp of gloominess appeared in the space between Gu Tianyi's brows. "Prepare yourselves. Perhaps we'll be able to split some benefits if we join forces this time." Chi Yao spoke abruptly, and her clear eyes stared at the heavenly tribulation in the distance. There, Ah Lu's figure was staggering and in a sorry state, and he was obviously on the verge of being unable to hold on for much longer. At the same time, the gazes of numerous experts in other areas flickered, and they were eager to make a move. "Who? Hurry up and fuck off. Can't you see that this area has been sealed off?" Suddenly, an explosive shout resounded from behind the crowd. However, the voice stopped abruptly in an instant. A bloody head flew into the air, and under the illumination of the dazzling tribulation lightning, one could clearly see that the face of the head was filled with terror and astonishment. A wave of restlessness instantly arose in the surroundings, and many gazes looked over. Some experts even grunted coldly with displeasure. Presently, the experts had already taken control of this area, and they were waiting for Ah Lu to fail his tribulation so that they could divide up the fortuitous encounters in his possession. But such an unexpected event had suddenly occurred at this moment, so it naturally caused them to be displeased. "Kill anyone that obstructs my path." Right when the gazes of everyone looked over, an extremely indifferent and icy cold voice resounded through the heavens and the earth, and every single word was like a thunderclap that shook the soul. A strange wave of silence appeared in the surroundings. Everyone was stunned and almost suspected that they'd heard wrongly. Who's so audacious to actually dare to act so arrogantly? After all, there were many ruthless figures that were renowned in the upper 9 realms present here, yet someone still dared to provoke them like this. This was simply courting death. Many people didn't believe it, and they obstructed the path and refused to back down. They wanted to see exactly which audacious fellow dared to make such a clamor. Pooh! 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 In the next moment, a string of dense blood suddenly sprayed out from the crowd that was distributed at the back, and it shot out like firecrackers. After that, all the figures that obstructed it were blasted into pieces like weeds, and a horrifying blood-red path was opened up in front of them. It was unstoppable. Everyone present couldn't help but be shocked as they watched experts fall like pieces of paper, and they didn't even have the time to let out a shrill cry. For a time, besides the rumbling of the tribulation lightning descending in the distance, the surroundings were actually extremely silent, and the gazes of everyone looked over in unison. They saw a tall and handsome figure walking out from the bloody path that was forcefully carved out, and his entire body was enveloped in the glow of the Tao and emitted fierce and monstrous killing intent. Crack! Right at this moment, a dazzling bolt of lightning tore through the sky, and it illuminated the figure's appearance down to the slightest detail. His black eyes were cold, his long hair fluttered, and his thin figure was like a towering and solitary mountain. Every single move he made contained an imposing aura that seemed capable of devouring everything and looking down upon the mountains and rivers. Beneath his feet was a path paved with scarlet-red blood and shattered corpses, and it caused him to seem like a devil god. "It's him, Devil God Lin!" someone cried out involuntarily. His words shocked everyone present, and many people's expressions changed. No wonder he dared to make such arrogant remarks. It turned out that it was this ruthless man who had come. Although he hadn't appeared for 2 years, who dared to forget this devil-like guy? Just the number of people who had died in his hands was innumerable. Lin Sun. In the distance, Ming Child suddenly raised his head, and his scarlet eyes were suffused with a sharp and unparalleled divine light. The resentment he had suppressed in his heart was almost uncontrollable. In the past 2 years, he couldn't forget the extraordinary shame and humiliation when he was chased by Lin Sun at that time. Lin Sun? Here comes another competitor. It's really troublesome. Bai Longting narrowed his eyes and restrained the smile on his lips. He looked at Lin Sun from a distance and couldn't help but frown slightly. He actually came. Does he really intend to be enemies with everyone to save that barbarian? Qi Yao was slightly absent-minded. Humph! If he dares to do so, he is destined to die a terrible death. Beside her, Gu Tianyi snorted coldly. At the same time, many ruthless figures in the dark were also sizing up and scrutinizing Lin Sun, who had suddenly come to kill him. Demon Lin. They had heard too many rumors about this person. He deserved his reputation. How could they not pay attention to such a ruthless character coming to kill him? Lin Sun was completely unaware of these gazes. From the beginning to the end, he didn't stop his steps and approached the place where Alu was going through the heavenly tribulation. Even his expression was so cold as if he had no emotions. "Lin Sun, what are you doing?" Even if it's a fight for good fortune, it should be first come, right? A gray-robed man looked gloomy. He blocked Lin Sun's way, but he was unwilling to give way, so he shouted fiercely. Swish! Lin Sun answered him with one finger. Instant of spring and autumn. The gray-robed man's body exploded in an instant, turning into a flying rain of blood that dyed the void red. Everyone's pupils suddenly shrank and they gasped. It was so ruthless that he didn't say a word. Obviously, he was going to kill his way out directly. The gray-robed man was a peerless figure who had stepped into the fifth retribution of longevity and was the leader of a great force. But now, he was killed by Lin Sun with one finger just because he was in the way. This bloody scene immediately shocked many people present. Lin Sun, you're so ruthless. Aren't you afraid of causing public anger? An illusory voice sounded, coming from the left and the right, making it impossible for people to identify the direction. Puff! However, as soon as the voice fell, a strong man in the crowd not far away died on the spot. He was killed by a bright broken blade. This made some of the strong men who were originally blocking Lin Sun's way feel cold all over. They couldn't help but take a few steps back subconsciously, making way for him. Everyone, stop him! This guy is with that barbarian. He's here to save that barbarian. Suddenly, a loud shout sounded. It was Gu Tianyi. He had just learned from Qi Yao that Alu and Lin Sun were friends. This sentence was earth-shattering, and it made the faces of all the strong men present change. The way they looked at Lin Sun also became different, with a deep hostility. Previously, they all thought that Lin Sun was here to fight for good fortune with them. Who would have thought that he actually had such a purpose? It could be said that this sentence made Lin Sun the target of all, the public enemy of all the people present. P.S. Mid-Autumn Festival, Goldfish wishes everyone a happy family reunion, happy holidays. In addition, as for the abuse in the book review section, please ignore it. There's no need to be angry for these low-quality people.